Good evening, folks. Welcome back to the channel. It is Friday, August the 27th, 2021. We got some fun stuff to talk about. I did put a little bit of a theme in the title, and as we talk through some stuff, I'll put some links to anything I refer to in the description like normal. It'll be the usual thing. So Bobby and I have a little bit of fun with this one. So Bobby, good evening. How's it going today?
Good Friday. Everything's great. Moving on.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice though, hobby-wise, on the whole. We're going to have a little fun with the topic off the top, but on the whole though, it was nice to have kind of an exhaling week. Like after so much, so much to go through. In relative terms, it was nice and calm waters this week. We're going to have a chance to go into a little bit of depth on something that initially I didn't think would have an obvious connection. But I think there's a little bit of something we can play into. We can definitely have some fun with that. So Bobby's going to be joining me. We're going to talk through that a little bit. So Mr. Dustin, if you're good, just nod and I can add you on here. Good stuff. Personal Finance Dad. Good evening. How are you?
How's it going? Evening, guys.
Hey, Dustin.
So I'll give you a quick backstory, and I'll also kind of include Dustin in this one. So I had sent Dustin a video that I'm going to reference at the beginning that we're going to talk about for a couple of minutes. And at first, there doesn't seem to be an obvious connection, but there are some threads that kind of play into it, and it is an interesting topic in and of itself. I'm always a big fan of reaching to the other hobbies to bring some of it into it. And since I had Dustin on a couple of weeks ago to talk about graded video games, this plays right into that realm. But then at the same time, there are some threads that do connect a little bit into the sports card world, and it'll become really obvious very quickly. But let me acknowledge a couple of comments here, and we'll get started. So Gigi Bam was first. Good evening. The Collector, good evening as well. Jeff, absolutely. 357, good evening. Master Damas, good evening. And there we go. Hey, Dustin from JJ Bama. Perfect. And good evening, Andy. Perfect. So I'll explain. It'll take a moment. I'll give a little background, and then I'll explain kind of how this played out. So early on in the week, there was a video pertaining to the state of like graded games, and it was kind of an investigative expose. And what I'll do is I'll show it on the screen so that you know what I'm talking about, and I'll talk through a little bit of it as well. But one of the things you got to bear in mind is at first, it doesn't seem to have a connection. I'm interested in a bunch of collecting genres, so interesting for me. But I know that Dustin's into graded video games, so I sent him the link after I had a chance to watch it. So at first, it just seemed like, oh, well, I wonder what's going on with this. And then Dustin had a chance to watch it. But the way I knew that it had been making the rounds and it was circling around is that today on Facebook, I got a ping and I got a link from Bobby Burrell on a graded video game video. That's how I know it had made the rounds. And no less than 5 minutes later, my younger brother, who's super into video games, also pinged me on Facebook to talk about the same thing. And today, no less than 6 or 7 people by the time I came on either mentioned the video, referenced something related to it, or sent me a link to said video.
I feel privileged being first.
Absolutely. But that's how you know that it makes the round. Because at that point it's expanded beyond the obvious people that I expect to see this from into other areas. So other people are catching wind of it, and the video itself has been doing very well. So I'll show you guys the video, I'll put it on the screen, and then I'll kind of give the Coles Notes version. But I do recommend, if by the time we're done talking you are remotely interested in anything related to it, I do recommend checking it out yourself. It is very well done. It is long. It's 52 minutes. But there's a lot of information in it. I think a lot of it is very well researched, but the other part is inferred. So there's always a separation. There's stuff that is well researched that you can document, that you can go check yourself if you really want to check the sources. And then there's stuff that's inferred based on this evidence. I believe this. And that's how you always want to make sure you distinguish the two things. They are two different things. So quickly, I'll put it up on the screen and then I'll explain the context behind it. And then I will go ahead.
Yeah, you say it's long, but actually when it ran out, I was sitting there wanting more.
Oh, for sure.
So it was
very well done.
Yeah.
And the other key thing that I'll say as well is at first it will not be remotely clear what the hell does this have to do with sports cards, why even bring it up. It becomes clearer as we go along. So I'll kind of explain as I give the synopsis. So good evening, name. Perfect. So the video is from Carl Jupst, and I totally butchered that last name, I have no doubt. But I will leave a link to this in the description so you guys can check it out if you wish. And it's exposing fraud and deception in the retro game market. So at least Carl knows how to properly put the title in to make it provocative. And I think, Dustin, that's the first thing you notice, that the title was very provocative. It's like, well, is this going to be a real thing? Or, what's going on with this one? You had a little skepticism at first.
Yeah, it's like with a title like that, you better be bringing the heat.
Yeah. And I thought he did a good job. I thought there was a lot in there. You can argue certain pieces of it, but there was a lot of good stuff in there. So the bottom line, here's the Coles Notes version of this. And it really comes down to this. The video game graded market has been expanding. It isn't that old. VGA has been around for maybe about a decade, but WATA is the key player in this particular discussion. WATA is more recent. I think it was 2019, 2018 when they got started. It wasn't that long ago. And as the prices exploded and you got those record prices on those games, they were always WATA games. And it started off with the idea of the Super Mario Brothers selling for 30,000 a couple of years ago, but then steadily increasing up until the most recent sale by Rally Road that was $2 million. So when you see $2 million, that's headline grabbing. That's huge. But what happened is Carl goes backwards a little bit and says, hold on, but WATA isn't that old. They haven't been around that long. How did we get there? And then starts pulling back certain layers and starts looking at it. Like I said, I'm not going to go through every single point in the video, but the short version is WATA kind of rose to prominence under kind of questionable circumstances. And then he outlines a lot of that. And the short version is they kind of got out of the gates. They got a big boost because they were accepted very early on by Heritage Auctions, which is a longtime auction house. They're a name in the hobby. And they accepted them immediately as kind of their preferred, great third-party grader for video games. Well, considering they had just gotten started, that's quite an endorsement when you've got no track record to speak of. So it'd be like Gold, the equivalent would be like Goldie saying, yeah, HGA is our one. Don't worry about PSA. Don't worry about SGC. Don't worry about a BGS. We'll take your HGA and that'll be what we'll put in our auction. Everyone would sit there and go like, why? But then as you go back into it, there's more layers to it. Jim Halpern, who's one of the folks that founded Heritage, was one of the advisors for WATA right at the beginning. And then as he goes through it, like I said, it's 52 minutes and there's a lot of pieces to it and it builds off of it in stages. It goes in chapters to build it through. Long story short, there's a little bit of a question of how they rose to prominence. There's a little bit of a question of how the owner, Dennis, became an expert in video games, even though he had, not been around the game at the same length of time as some other folks. Why was VGA ignored, even though they had been around longer? Why are so many people so invested in this WATA thing? And they made him a player. And as those prices kept going up, then you had to start putting the pieces together. And some more questions became about that Super Mario game. Well, Jim Halpern is going to come up a lot in that discussion. Long story short, he's involved in almost every single aspect of this story from beginning to end. And then you suddenly peel back the curtain and go back to Jim Halpern's earlier career, go back to the 1980s in coins. And when somebody was fined $1 million plus for some price manipulation, some questionable practice, Jim Halpern's name comes up again and again and again and again, every single time. Now that's the past. And those are the questions that come up with this. There's a couple of ways I can bring this into the sports card angle, but we got to remember something. Who bought WATA recently? Collector's Universe. So that drags us kind of into the current day. Now, one more thing I'll add here quickly, and I want to talk about a lot because there's a lot to digest, but I want to talk about something that also plays into today. Now, I can't blame collectors, assuming even half of it is true, even a third. That's a lot. There's actually a lot in there. But I can't blame Collector's Universe for Jim Halpern. I can't blame them for the past. But I can question how much due diligence they did. And also, I can question the timing. Not even so much question. It's just like, man, bad timing for 500, Alex. And I'll explain to you why. Remember, like I said, Collector's Universe bought WATA. So now they're business partners. They're in bed together. For better or for worse, no matter how you want to present it. Well, what I'd like to do now is I'm going to share my screen again for you guys. And I'd like to give you, this is a tweet from August 25th. So 2 days ago. So not long. And I'd like to share this one with you. So here's a tweet from Nat Turner, August 25th, regarding the world's greatest video game collection. And it's a link to a YouTube video. And it's the best video game collection tour. So he links to it. And this is a link to, and I'm going to shift over to that video itself. See, they're onto us. The fuzz, they know.
Hello, Jim.
Yeah. So here's the video. This video is on the Golden Auctions YouTube page. And it is profiling Dennis Kahn, who is founder and president of WATA Games. Really bad timing for 500, Alex. So to be clear, I'm not accusing Nat Turner of anything. I'm not accusing Collector's Universe of anything. I'm just saying I find the timing hilariously interesting about it because we had Heritage Auctions as the player in the game. Obviously, Golden Auctions is owned by Collector's Universe. And of course, our good friends at Golden. Well, Golden is in the video game sphere now. So I'm going to link to one more thing on here. And to be clear, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm merely presenting these things as the timing they came into it. And so Dennis, who wants the Super Mario 64 this WATA graded from Golden Auctions? Anyone? Raising your hands? Dustin, I know you want it. Don't lie to me.
It's all mine, guys. It's all mine.
Absolutely. That was the previous record holder prior to the latest Super Mario Brothers one. Guys, if I was trying to tell me you look guilty without telling me you were guilty, why of all the games in the world, of all the people to promote, days after something had just come out, and of course, Heritage denied it and a variety of folks denied it, and I understand it, but of all the people in the world to be profiling, of all the games in the world to be profiling, Is this what you would choose to do right this second? Just as that video game video has already got 700,000 views. It has been making the rounds. It made it all the way to the desk of Bobby Burrell, unsolicited by me or anybody else. He reached out to me. I had already seen it, but the fact it was coming up all of a sudden everywhere, and the people were asking about it left, right, and center, like just reaching out of the blue and like, hey, did you see this? Well, yeah, I have, but it's interesting to me that you saw it. How fascinating.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Bobby, why don't you take a stab at this? You saw the video, but this other stuff, I told you I had something interesting to look at. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's extremely interesting. It's amazing how many things are tied in together with all of this, with WATA and what's the guy? Dennis Kahn is his name? Was it?
Yeah, it's Dennis. Yeah, I think it's Dennis D-E-N-I-Z. It's spelled a little differently, but
no, I'm looking at the last name. It's K-A-H-N. That's anyways.
Yeah.
We'll take it from there. I think it was. I think there's a lot more to even unpack than this. That goes deeper. This is the stuff we know. Being a historian and an archivist and what have you, when you dig a little bit and you get past everything, you really start to understand things a little bit better. And it's amazing the other things that tie in, like I talked about the Parkhurst history and how they had the two teams, and then but Sheriff only came out with two teams. They couldn't get all the American teams too, so the licensing and so once you start unveiling a lot of things, other things start to come to roost, I guess, and I guess we'll find out more as time goes on. I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now, Dustin, you, like I said, you as well got a chance to see the video. I don't know. Did you see that tweet from Nat or any of the other stuff with the video?
So I'd actually seen that video that he shared, the Golden Auctions video with Dennis's collection. I had seen that before you had shared it.
Sure.
It's impressive. It's an impressive
collection. I have no doubt about that. And to be clear, I'm not accusing Nat or them of anything, because I'm not in Carl's position where he has done his research on his video. He is able to cite things, SEC filings and things that you could then yourself, if you wished, could go look up yourself. I'm merely pointing to the tweet that exists, to the video that exists, to the auction house that exists, that is promoting the video games that exist. You infer whatever you want from that. I am merely putting the pieces together for you. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, it obviously didn't stop them from kind of moving ahead with their plan. Their promotional things, it didn't phase them one bit. And you're right, that video has made the rounds. I mean, I'm in a couple of like Facebook WATA groups, where you have collectors and you have sealed game collectors, and you have, WATA. One of them's called like the unofficial WATA group or something, and that video is all over that group. It's all over it. The thing that's kind of interesting to me, that's kind of fascinating to watch, is there are big channels that Carlos, we've talked about this before too, that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers that are gaming collector type channels. And it's almost like for some of them, it's almost new to them, like this whole graded video game thing, even though now granted it is only a few years old, but there's some videos that have come out since this Carl video. And it's almost like they're just broaching this for the first time, almost like they've heard of it, but they've never really dove into it. And that's just kind of shocking. And it's kind of interesting to watch when you're, operating in sports cards, comic books, and some of these others where you have the hardcore comic book collectors. They know all about CGC graded comics, and, sports card people know all about, even if you're a person that just, collects raw cards, you don't like graded cards, whatever, all about the grading companies. It's almost like kind of the first, you see it kind of happening for the first time with a lot of these video game collector folks. And I think that's kind of interesting to watch, especially when they have massive channels on YouTube. That's a little bit different than what we see in comic books and in sports cards, frankly. You've got these, video game collector guys that have been on for 10 years. They've got a few 100,000 subscribers or whatever. So that's kind of fascinating. I've been watching kind of their reactions as well to it. I'm struggling with, I totally agree. I got sucked into that. I'll call it a documentary because it was like a documentary watching it.
It was stylized like one, and it was broken up into like I said, guys, I do recommend, regardless, if you're just simply interested, I do still recommend checking it out just because it's interesting and it is well researched, and you don't have to agree with all the conclusions and everything. Like I said, there's a difference between the pieces that are verifiable things that you could go look up yourself if you wished, which is good. You always want to have that part of it. But then there's part that you infer. You say, okay, there's enough smoke in all these rooms. We believe there to be a fire. I can't see the fire myself, but there's so much smoke. We think there's a good chance there's a fire in here somewhere.
And I always, I mean, just to give you background on me, I mean, for any sort of piece of news, any subject topic or whatever, I don't take anything for face value. And that's where I had trouble, because I'm watching this and I'm getting sucked into it, and it's very well done. It's very well done to where it's, you know, when people are speaking with conviction, they've got data to back it up. You know, you get like mentally, you get drawn into it. And I had to catch myself just thinking, like, is there any piece of context that's missing at all? Is there any context that's missing from this? And that's where I think this documentary or YouTube video is a great conversation starter. I feel like it's a good starting point. You know, it's like, okay, you found something. There's probably, you know, and the other thing is I'm a child of a divorced family. So I've been the mediator between my parents for 30 years. And so I've learned there's also 5 sides to a story too, to where it's like, you know, I want to hear from all the other folks. You know, it's like, we've got one angle here. What about all the other people that are talked about? You know, and maybe we'll never hear any of that stuff. But my point is just that there's other angles to it. There's probably pieces of information missing, I would assume.
There usually is, but it's going to be one of those things. To your point, though, I don't think the full picture is ever going to come out. And this kind of plays into something we touched on last week, Bobby, where there's a lot of. So I want to touch on the thing Dustin said about how some of those channels were caught by surprise, because I think it's a very good point. I also think there is a logical reason for it, and I'll present my theory on why I think that is. But the other key that I wanted to bring up is that we alluded to how over the course of time, if you've been in the hobby a long time, you're going to hear whispers of this, that, and the other thing. And you have to separate out rumor and innuendo from, you know, factual thing. I tend to stick to, if I personally witnessed XYZ, I'm a lot more inclined. But if I hear from enough sources that have no particular axe to grind, if it's a competitor, well, I'm going to take what you say with a grain of salt. You know, you have every vested interest in knocking somebody down a peg. But if I hear it from competitors, if I hear it from friends, if I hear it from family, if I hear it from close associates who've been collecting with them a long time or whatever, I'm like, how many of you are going to give me almost the identical story at different times in different places, solicited and unsolicited, before I go, again, a lot of smoke. I might not be able to detect the exact source of the fire, but I have to infer that there may be more to it than simply people rumor mongering, especially if the people have no vested interest in it one way or the other. So it's the source as much as anything else. I'm buying the source rather than necessarily buying the story. So I need to keep that in mind.
Absolutely right. And I think I told you this, there's other videos that he's done that are excellent. Before he ever did this one, I was already watching his stuff. I wasn't subscribed to it,
yes,
but I'd already been watching it. And I think that's where, you know, he's got clout, you know, I mean, he's already done kind of good work. And so that's where I think that, you know, people believe it. And like I said, it's not that I'm saying that he's wrong or none of that's true or any of that. It could all very well be true. I don't know, but yeah, it's kind of like it's a thing with me. I'm going back and forth with it. You know, it's fascinating.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll include, and it kind of plays into what you said as well, is that he's in a very dangerous spot, because even with some of his Billy Mitchell videos and things he's done in the past, he's already been threatened to be sued. It's to the point that he's had to do GoFundMe's to start putting some money aside for potential legal costs, with the anticipation that he may be sued. That's another reason, though, to consider that he may have been very careful in making sure his sources were tight, because if you go and accuse people willy-nilly of this, that, or the other thing, what I showed you guys with the Twitter page, that's on his Twitter page. Go to his Twitter page and go look it up. I actually wasn't planning on finding it. I found it a couple of hours ago when I was looking up. I was curious if he had said anything related to anything about it. And that was one of the ones that came up from a couple of days ago, which led to the link to the Golden YouTube page, which then opened it up. Who is it? Our good friend Dennis. I didn't go in with the idea of finding that, but it took me all of 2 minutes. My Google foo was strong, but I didn't have to use my best moves. It was actually really easy to locate those kind of pieces. But that's why I say, like, I'm not going to do a GoFundMe for a legal page, so I'm not accusing the man of anything. As far as I'm concerned, Nat Turner is a saint, a scholar, and a gentleman.
I did think that he put it in a way that the facts explained everything. I don't think he was making acquisitions. I think he was more saying this looks kind of funny. This looks.
But I think he understood. He understood how to phrase it in a way where it's like, look, I'm not going to tell you definitively this is so. I will present this to you. Come to your own conclusion. Here's what I'm seeing, though. This is what it looks like to me, which is an angle you can take. Which is, look, I'm rendering an opinion. This is the information in front of me. This is what it looks like. So real quick, I'll catch up on a couple of comments here. Business124, good evening. Hazi Kardai, good evening. So from the phone call from earlier, Sasha T calling you to make a deal. Don't let him browbeat you, especially not in an airport. If he corners you in an airport, you're doomed. Timing is everything. Absolutely, Andy. PWCC also saying they're putting a graded Mario Brothers into their vault. That's the $2 million one. And by the way, on their email about it, they already bumped it up 10%. They called it a $2.2 million. The campaign continues. We're going to bump it up. It's already been bumped up another 10%, just for the record.
They're counting their profits on it. So.
Exactly. Sorry about every collection of somebody else's vault. Completely fair. Good evening, Yannick. It's the only Friday night show. There's another Friday night show. Outrageous. I don't know what you're talking about. That's crazy talk.
Somewhere.
4-leaf cards. Good evening. What's up? Absolutely. So particularly the way they handle them. Yep. DJ Ski is not gentle with other people's slabs in the vault. Good evening, Victor. Absolutely. I'm quickly going here. And good evening, Eric. Absolutely. Happy Friday. So what I was going to say, though, about your point about those channels being caught, quote unquote, unaware, I think, though, that for graded video games, VGA, the other big grader, is only about 10 years old. So to put it into context, that would be like sports card grading in 2001. People in 2001. So like Bobby's been around longer than that. I was already 10 years in by that point. So like, but it was a slow build. It wasn't like PSA showed up in 1991. They had that big Honus Wagner. It sold for $451,000. It was all of a sudden we were off to the races grading everything. No, that isn't. It took you kind of alluded to it, Dustin, in a question you asked. My experience was it took years to get traction for grading. Years. Like they were grading cards, but I guarantee you they've graded probably about 98% of all the PSA cards in all of history in like the last 18 months.
Yeah,
so it's one of the, like it's really heavy backloaded. It's only in the last couple of years that they've really been full scale production day after day, week after week, to the point they created that backlog.
They always say that hockey has been 10 years behind baseball, and I guess you could incorporate that the video games is kind of 10 years behind the sports card community. So I think they equalize each other about this time. So very interesting that that company's been around only 10 years, but 10 years is a long time in today's world.
At least it's earned them some credibility. That's why the decision of Heritage to ignore them in lieu of a competitor that had no track record. So that's under the category of, is it the most damning thing? No. Is it a bit suspicious? Yes.
Right.
Why would you run to somebody who's never done it before, really?
Yeah, the struggle with this, it feels like, is there's so few players and there's so few, especially in video games, you don't have a lot of supply really. So perception, I think it's very easy for perception to get out of whack very quickly. It's like it could very well be that WATA and Heritage just made a business deal that, oh, okay, great, you'll carry my games on your auction platform. Cool. We made a good business deal. But because there's just so few players, it's like now you look back at it and you're like, wait a second, what's that about? Whereas otherwise, if there was a dozen players, you might have not even thought about it.
Oh, for sure.
So Dustin, I got a question for you. Do they grade unboxed video games too?
Yeah, so they grade just the cartridges, and then they grade complete inbox, which is the box, the manual, and the cartridge, and then they grade just the sealed stuff.
So the basic stuff, or the cartridge is just dime a dozen kind of thing.
Right.
In some cases, yes. I can tell you there's some in cartridge that are a
Probably
little bit tougher to come by.
Sure.
They're very select. Those ones still go for good money, even just cartridge alone, if they're tougher to come by.
Well, I did see, I think it was Rally Road or Otis or one of the fractionals had just a cartridge graded of, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it was the Championships cartridge. The
yes, the Nintendo. Yeah, because that one doesn't have a box. So
that's right.
Oh, never had a box.
It was given out it was a Nintendo World Championships. So what happened is if you participated in it, there was one set, and then there was a set, I think if you were the winners, that was a really, really rare one. But those would never have come in a box. They were a cartridge with a Switch. It was kind of a unique design for Nintendo, but it's like you had to be there. You had to be there and you had to be a participant to get one, period.
Those must be worth a lot, eh?
They are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They are. So for that one, having the cartridge, that's enough. As long as it's real, you're good to go. You're off to the races as far as value. But to put it into context, you could have gotten that for a couple of grand up until a couple of years ago. Like it wasn't. So that is like the holy grail in some ways of the collecting genre. And they were years and years and years behind on value. That's why the sudden escalation in the last couple of years, thanks to our good friends at WATA, at least in part, is kind of like, well, you suddenly jump from all to nothing.
Is there a preference, Dustin, between the two grading companies?
I really don't, but honestly, I have kind of a singular focus, at least right now, with graded video games, and I was telling Carlos, I really want the original 30 black box NES games. Mm-hmm. So it's like, volleyball. I just bought volleyball the other day. There's 30 games that came out that were part of that original launch. And so for me, and a lot of people, I have my other channel, they've been saying like, oh man, you got, it's too bad your stuff is worthless now. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I mean, first off, I don't think it's worthless. Secondly, the other part is I just want it to be authenticated mainly. And also, if you go through the documentary, there's not really a question as to the skill of the grading part. It's not, that part's not really in question. It's more of, was there help with, or at least I didn't.
Well, they question their ability. They do question their ability to tell something is sealed. They do question like the letter grade on the ceiling a little bit, just because they show one where it's clearly ripped, and it's like, you have a standard. It's
where is the standards? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
So it a 9.8 to A++, and then it had
so what happens
pairs, which it's not supposed to have.
Yeah. So just to keep it short, is that the number grade is pertaining to the overall grade, but then they've got a letter grade based on the quality of the seal. And you've got a scale, and they state that in order to qualify for the highest grade, an A++ in the seal, it can't have these things. It's very similar to what PSA does. There's a standard, like you can fall within these parameters, but you can't have this. You can't have tears. You can't have holes. And then he shows one on there that clearly has holes and tears, and it gets an A++ anyway.
Yeah. So for me, and all I'm buying are the CIB, the complete in box, because the sealed stuff is
it's not going to play into what you're talking about.
It's impossible to find, and even if you do find it, it's 5-6 figures. And I'm just not. I just want a copy of it. I don't necessarily. I just want a complete in box. In the box copy of it. So whether it be VGA or whether it be WATA, I don't have a preference there. So yeah. I guess that answers the question. I was going to go somewhere with it and I forgot. So go ahead.
That's fair. That's fair. So one of the things I wanted to kind of point out as well is that part of the issue really comes down to not whether they could do the job or not, because we can always get into the weeds on that. We do that with sports cars anyway. We question whether they're qualified to do that's always going to be part of the conversation, especially for longtime hobbyists. Where I think a lot of the longtime hobbyists came into objection to it is that, like, guys, we've been trading in this stuff for years and years and years. And where it came into it is that you had WATA suddenly got pushed into a position of prominence out of nowhere, seemingly. Heritage Auctions was very helpful in getting them that credibility, because once you become the virtually exclusive, oh yeah, we'll do business with you guys, it gives you credibility. Heritage has been around for a long time, so they imbibed upon you credibility. They bestowed it upon you simply by bringing you in. It was the opposite of what Golden did, because when Golden talked about HGA and that, he goes, I'll see you in a couple of years. He didn't jump on the HGA bandwagon at the first possible opportunity. He goes, no, show me a track record and then we'll get back to this. Like, I'll look at it once you've been around for a little while.
Now, let me throw in a caveat too. You keep that thought, but I want to also state too that I've watched a lot of kind of the older channels, the collector channels, and I've gone back in time and watched videos, and they were excited about WATA. A lot of them that I've seen were excited about them because of the collectors that founded it. So there was kind of a positive energy that I saw some positive energy when they started out. So I just want to kind of throw that in for some context. I'm not saying that everybody thought that, but some of the biggies, out there they weren't necessarily like, what is this? What's this new company? What's this about? They were actually like, oh, cool. We like these guys.
You could see that because there's only one company. So you have finally competition.
Yeah. Competition. Yeah.
So I think that would be welcoming at that point.
Now it's a very valid point, but it also kind of plays into the whole Nat Turner thing, isn't it? When Nat Turner became part of the group at Collectors Universe, the automatic, man, Nat's a collector, which by the way, he is. There's no doubt. There's no question he's a collector. Like his credentials as a collector, he's certified. Like he's been around and long enough. He's been collecting enough. He's been showcasing his pieces when not involved in the hobby whatsoever. So he is also a client. He's got that part of, he's got credibility from that side of it. But then that leads to an immediate jump. It's like, oh, and he's also great at business. That can also be true. Many things can be true at the same time. You can be great at business. You can be a collector at heart. That can all be true. But then when it comes time to run a business inside of the hobby, that's a different kettle of fish. And it kind of plays into, I'll bring back the Collectors Universe piece, since they're now, financially incentivized to continue to work with WATA because they bought them. So it's part of the business. But one quick thing I'll mention about that as well is that relationships in the hobby, we talk about in a variety of ways, are super important, but they also create blind spots. And this is always a thing that I always it's an underlying theme that I touch on. It's like, yes, relationships are super important in the hobby, but it's really hard for me to vouch for people that I only know to a certain degree. Because if you enter business with somebody, that's another level. because now it's how much due diligence did you do? Because now you're on the hook for the sins of whoever was involved. So when WATA works with Heritage, Jim Halpern has some dirty laundry from his past that can be found. Like, we don't have to go too far to find. He's named in it. It's not like oh, that's not true. Yes, it is. It is true. Now, does that mean he's never going to sin again? Well, maybe, maybe not. But there are people who have questioned various things, and the auction business has always been a little bit questionable. The auction business always has that layer of, are you doing everything completely on the up and up all the time? Are there no like bro prices, bro, associations and deals going on? And he's already been fined once for this kind of thing, in a different genre, but he's already played into it. They brought in an interview, which is like a character interview. By the way, take it with a grain of salt. It's part of the documentary. But he's also been accused, at least suggested, that he may have done some things in another genre, comic collecting. So it's like, strike one, strike two. Would it really be past you to try it a third time? Is there a thing that could be going on there with it? That's always a question. So it's difficult. You want to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody who is a legitimate collector because you like them in that space. That's what I think Dennis got to benefit from, that, because people knew he was a legitimate collector. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to operate as a good businessman or as a completely, like, maybe you'll look the other way when things are being done that you kind of, hey, I know what's going on here, but at the same time, I'm making money. I'll play into it.
I have a question. So what would happen if, let's just kind of toss this in.
Go ahead.
So a lot of this, I think, too, is WATA is a 3-year-old company. And it seems like there's kind of like a pattern of third-party grading entering a space, and all of a sudden values rise. And then there's kind of people looking closer at it. What if, PSA was a 3-year-old company? Like, what if that, these were new companies on the block? What if VGS was the VGA, in this story, and PSA is the WATA? I guess because now we're seeing multi-million-dollar sales for sports cards, it's kind of a similar story, over the last few years.
Exactly similar.
So I just wanted to leave this on the screen here for Aussie Card Dad. He was just asking about the prices.
Yeah, I was wondering myself.
Yeah, so this is the WATA one. It's based on the service levels, just like any other third-party grader. Same concept. So this is some of it. I wasn't super familiar because I've never sent anything for grading myself. But concept-wise, you can see there is some limits to basically the declared value, just like any other third-party grader. You got 150 business days turbo speedrun. You get the cute little video game-related gifs to it. Warp Zone plus $125 added to the speedrun price. There you go. But yeah, that's the ballpark of it. And I think VGA is probably in a similar ballpark, in that same range.
The question would be, was VGA grading with a percentage base before, or just doing a flat grade, depending on, didn't matter what?
I think they did. I think they've done tiers for a while. I haven't submitted any, but I am, because VGA was around longer, I at least heard of them. Early on, I used the story about with Dustin when I started going into the game swaps. What happened was I once in a blue moon would see a VGA. That's what I mean. Like, it was very small, like very niche. So once in a blue moon, I'd see one. But at that time, if I saw it, it would be a VGA one. But it wasn't like a commonplace thing. Most of the sellers were selling it because a lot of it were still weekend warriors. And people that would go, literally guys who would go garage sailing, find stuff, and then bring it to the game swap. And they would sell it that way. The stuff had value, but it was like, if you got a really rare title, it was a couple $100. And that was even back in 2015, 2016. Like, it wasn't 25 years ago. It was 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't think that VGA, I don't think it was a sophisticated operation where it was like one grader, and I think it was like an added kind of service they were offering. They weren't getting volume. It wasn't from my understanding.
Very small potatoes. Very small potatoes. Good evening, Boston Kid. Absolutely. Phrase of the day, conflict of interest. Facts. DR here says, what happens to the MUD SPAC? I think it dissolves because the MUDs was based on Tops being part of it. I don't think MUD sticks around once they kind of put the kibosh on it. They go back to being a SPAC. They can go and invest in something else because it's just a pool of money to invest in something. That's all a SPAC really is. So they were going to create the company with Tops, and that was going to be MUDs. And now that will no longer be the case. They'll just have to find something else to buy. Maybe they'll buy a VGA.
Right.
We'll get you back.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's coming in and buying VGA next? That'll be interesting.
Well, I was going to say one thing. VGA, funny enough, released something. Like I said, The situation's developing. The collector's universe connection, it was what brings it into our world. It's what makes it interesting. The Nat Turner connection, the Golden connection. They brought it into our universe. Originally, it was firewalled. It was a different thing. Interesting for me to watch. But you guys brought it into my parlor. You've entered it into the space. So here we are. The other thing I was going to say, though, is that from what I understand, VGA has recently sent out an email or a press release or something that they're giving updates, that they're working on the website. And one of the things they made reference to, they said with the new website upgrade, they're planning on adding a population report.
Look out.
How conveniently timed. I was like, VJ, I see you. I see what you're doing there.
Yeah.
I like that. Hey, you may as well take a shot at the king while he's taking body blows elsewhere. It's like, yeah, by the way, we're going to put a population report because, by the way, we think that's a great idea. It's like, why didn't you do it the last 10 years? That's not the point. The point is we think a population report is a great idea right now. It is great.
It's their idea now.
It is now. Yeah. So this is Many Ninjas, my younger brother. Somehow I don't think those icons are public domain. They might not be. Imagine if Nintendo is like, yeah, we're suing you, by the way. Those are our icons. Yeah, if they got Nintendo from the garage, absolutely. Are the consoles worth anything? Some of them are. It depends. And also, it's like anything else. If you have it in the box and stuff, yeah, for sure. Some of the more obscure ones are worth something anyway, just because they're obscure. But again, maybe in today's world, they're certainly worth a lot more. I was able to buy some of those consoles pretty cheap. Like, you could buy some of the obscure ones in the box and everything. Again, a couple of $100. But you would think in relative terms, if something is like really rare, the scarcity is going to be the question. The whole thing with population reports isn't that it's going to give us the full answer. It's that it's going to give us a ballpark of where we stand today. Because if the dollars keep going up, though, then more people submit, the population report becomes better at giving us a relative scarcity of different things. Today, the argument, and Dustin mentioned before, was like, oh, well, but it's going to show some of them as being rare just because not a lot of people submitted it. Well, yeah, but as the prices raise, it's going to get more people to submit, and we're going to get a better ballpark figure.
Yeah.
And some of the major, go ahead.
It definitely affects people on the very high end, because if you're spending $1 million or a couple $1 million, and the assumption is that you've got one of 5 or one of 3 or one of 1 or, so if there turns up to be 100 of them, then maybe, it's not worth $1 million to you, or maybe it still is, who knows? I mean, but I think that's where it'll affect most people. The one thing I was like, the black box NES games, even the complete in box stuff, which is not a sealed game. Just looking on Heritage, if you can go on past sales on Heritage, which go back to 2019, that's when they started for WATA. There's not much there. Like I looked up volleyball. It's a black box NES game. It's graded. There's like 5 of them that have sold in the last 2 years, or something. And then you go on eBay and there's nothing there. So I mean, I think if like the whistleblowers are thinking like a population report's going to come out and there's 10, it's Luca Prism PSA 10, there's 17,000. I'm just not I don't know where they are unless collectors are hoarding them and they're just they're in basements, somewhere. I don't know, but I can't find them. And you would think with prices going up that somebody would look to sell. If they have 10 of them, they'd say, well, hell, I'll sell 5 and keep 5, or
well,
whatever.
there was a story, and maybe my brother can keep me honest if he's still listening on this one. I remember a discussion somewhere where there was a case where there was a run up on a certain game because the presumption was that it was rare. And there was a big time collector who had been accumulating for years, who apparently caught wind of this, was very frustrated with that, very upset, irritated about it. And he had stacks of them. So what he did, he goes, okay, you think it's rare? He flooded the market with them. Kind of to make the point, he goes, it's not rare. I got lots. I got stacks of them. Because sometimes people would buy them in sealed cases. And if you got sealed cases, well, the games are sealed. So if you're a collector who just likes hoarding, you sit there and you're like, oh, this is a rare game. Oh, really? Let me go open Warehouse H. Let me go lift it up here. I'm going to grab a couple of these cases, because if you did have population reports and this person and this guy did it out of spite. He didn't do it because he needed the money. He did it out of spite. He goes, no, I'm going to show you how rare it is. If you get a couple of these guys and go, okay, bring your population report. As soon as you bring it, I'm going to send you 100 of them. It's like, what happened? That tanked the price. Not my problem. That's the problem to you that paid 10 grand or 50 grand or 100 grand for it. I've had hundreds of them back here, and I've got hundreds more. How many do you want me to flood the market with?
But isn't it a deterrent now that you see one of those games going for $1 million? Now the cost of that to get graded now has risen to the point that maybe people will not submit their game because they don't want to pay that difference. They're not that confident that they're going to get that money back from that game. Is that a problem or an issue?
And there's something too that there's a hardcore, and this could change. I think this is something where, again, it's like for the hardcore collectors, a lot of them are new to this graded thing, to where they don't like it. You know, and I think their buddies don't like it. Their buddies don't like it, so they don't like it. You know, and they just don't like it. So, but you kind of raise a good point. It's like, yeah, but now if they're going for $2 million, like maybe you like it a little bit. You know, maybe you're like, well, maybe I could sell off a couple of these or something. But that's what the thing that's so weird. It's not weird. It's just new to a lot of these people. These collectors are just not. And maybe they're just like, look, I just think it's stupid. I'm not interested in getting involved in it.
Yeah, for sure. Now, this will kind of play into Bobby's wheelhouse a little bit, because I think he'll enjoy this piece. Because what happened is, part of the reason why that was possible, even 5 years ago, is because video games, while they were becoming increasingly collectible, even at the time we were doing those game swaps, they were starting to get more attended. Yes, prices were going up, but they were going up incrementally. They were going up like the rarest of the rare, that Nintendo World Championships card, those ones kept steadily going up because they were tough to come by. Almost everything else, though, was commonly available. Like, you could find it. You could even find it out in the wild. You could find it at garage sales. You could find it at flea markets. They were out there if you were willing to look hard enough. And an entire subgenre of YouTube channels were around game chasing. It's exactly what it sounds like. We're going out there. We're going to flea markets. We're going to these things. Oh, man, this is an uncommon game. This is a more, not rare, uncommon. Like, there's scales, right? It's like, yes, it's not the super common one, but it has its things. But what became of it is that as people found these things, you became aware of it. You'd see it. Like, oh, you're able to find these all the time. Well, then you know, hey, they're not super rare. The whole idea of the seal was supposed to be like the last frontier. It's like, but yeah, some people kept it. There was overstock in stores. There were a variety of different avenues. There were sources. Video games have only been around, really, in cartridge and, you know, portable form since the 80s. Like, really, it's late 70s if you want, like, maybe Atari. So it's like, you got to reach there. And a lot of those Atari ones were printed like crazy. So it's one of those things, like, there's lots of them out there. And an example was using that video, the Spider-Man one. Oh, man, you'd think that a Spider-Man game from the 80s, oh, it must be super rare. Until a bunch of them and stacks of them, it's like, yeah, I got boxes. And people would submit them in, send them in for grading, and all of a sudden, the page is full of them. One after another, you sell them. But it is interesting that, I think part of the reason for the resentment, though, Dustin, is that some of these old school guys are like, we've been collecting video games for 35 years. In the modern day, with technology and social media, I'm talking about YouTube channels. I'm not talking about, like, think of how far the video game market is so new relatively, that it was born once it took some traction. It was born into the social media age. The internet was out there. People could go to eBay. They could find it in all these different avenues of these places. But then all of a sudden you have folks coming out and saying, like, oh man, these are undervalued. And those old-time collectors are like, but we've known certain ones are uncommon. Who are you to say it's undervalued if that's what the market rate has been? Now I'm putting this on the screen for you for a reason. This is a podcast I listen to. It's called Grails. It talks a lot about fractional investing and things like that. They talk a lot about that. Their most recent episode was with a guy named Eric Neyerman. He's one of the guys in that documentary. He's the guy who bought the $1 million worth of video games and had that big collection.
That guy, yeah.
This is him on the most recent one, just from I think yesterday. And he also talks about the video that's circulating around social media that accuses some actors in the video game market of possible fraud. Just saying. Yeah, but of course he defends himself and he says, like, no, you know, I'm just a passionate collector and I believe this stuff should be worth more. And I'm like, well, if you're a passionate collector, why do you believe it should be worth more? If it should be worth more, it'll be worth more. People will pay more. You're telling me it should be worth more. You're encouraging people to pay more, not because they felt like paying more, but because you think they should pay more.
Something that's interesting too is with video games is there's that added utility to it that like maybe like sports cards doesn't have, where it's like there's a big like video games are meant to be played. You know, they're meant to.
Well, unless it's sealed, then that defeats the whole point.
Right. Or yeah, they're meant to be played. Well, maybe that's why there's not many sealed copies because all these guys just want to play them. But there is a lot of those folks are like, they're meant to be played. They're not meant to be in this case. They're not meant to be displayed, you know, or they are, but you know, not for that reason or whatever. But that's kind of an added thing too. That's kind of interesting.
No, for sure.
Another added thing, I guess, with that is sort of Cards came from wax packs. Wax packs are very collectible. They're very, very high and sought after. Now, here's a quick question. If you found a Bobby Orr unopened pack from 1966, there's 4 cards, piece of gum. What's one pack worth? So you look at the Bobby Orr rookie card, figuring you're going to get an average of a 7, so you kind of put it on a pedestal. What if you found a box? What's each pack worth? What if you found a case? What is each pack worth? Boy, we start dropping like this very fast, even in this community of Bobby Orr, of being sought after.
Well, the perception of scarcity is more important. The perception is more important than the reality. The reason I bring this up is that it does play into the sports card. I don't have to, like I said, as soon as Collectors Universe bought it, you just brought it in my universe. You just dragged it with a hook. You're in now. You're part of this too. So you don't get out. I was still observing it from afar, but you just dragged it right in. Hey, Golden? Oh yeah, great. Keep dragging it in. Keep dragging it even closer.
It's a Collector's Universe.
Exactly. But the thing is that Bobby's point is correct. The people who are paying the big money, and let's assume the people, again, I'll play devil's advocate here. Let's assume the people that are paying big money and are legitimate collectors, and they just like the idea of it being rare because they want to have the best copy, the best version. But there has to be a certain insecurity, and you don't know if it's the only copy. It could be, or it could be one of 2 or 3, and there's another guy sitting in it. And this Eric guy in it, he says, oh, well, I talked to a lot of big collectors that I know, and I know what the population some of these are. So he's basically doing by word of mouth survey. And I'm like, why do you have to do it by word of mouth survey when a population report would handle this for us? He would just tell us that at least today, that is the number. Oh, but what about crack cards and things? We deal with this in sports cards. We understand that. But as you get more traction, you get more stuff graded, the population report, over time, if you've got 10,000 copies of that Super Mario in 9.5 or higher, and 100 of them in 9.8, is it really that rare? 100 is not like millions, but for somebody who paid $2 million for one, is 100 feel good to you? Probably not.
Rarity does rule. It does rule the hobby. And I deal more in rarity because of the other things that I do around the hockey hobby. You know, not necessarily the cards, you know, obviously there are a lot of rare cards, but there's a lot more around the rarity of other items. And, you know, I know a lot of backstories behind other people who have, oh, this guy's got a warehouse full of those things, but he only lets out so many at a time. Other guys will just try to get rid of them because they just want to wholesale the whole thing out there. So they flood the market. So you have to really play in and say, how, what is the price? And, I get a lot of emails from people or messages saying, hey, Bobby, what do you think? I said, there was a fine of those like 15 years ago. They're still making around. So sometimes they come out and then they kind of go away for a little while and they come back out. So it's always rarity will rule, and it gets people too.
I mean, there's a bunch of hoopla about the ET Atari game, graded. There's, because you can buy sealed copies of that graded. And there's a lot of people that are like, hey, they dumped 1 million of those into the ground in New Mexico or wherever. I don't know if you saw that documentary. Did you see that?
It's the 52 tops thing. There you go.
Yeah, they buried. So this whole documentary, I can't remember the name of it. Maybe someone in the chat knows, but I'll send it to you guys if you haven't seen it. But essentially, it's all about like, we heard that there was millions of copies of ET because it was such a bad game. They were all buried out in the desert. And these guys are on this like trek to find out if this is true or not. And I won't ruin it for you, but it's all about them finding these games. And but it's just funny. So now when I see that on eBay, I'm like, that's really hilarious. There's people that are speculating like, well, they buried millions of copies of these, so this is actually maybe kind of rare or whatever, but who knows?
Yeah. And the funny thing about it, and I saw the one you're talking about, the funny thing about it is that the city was able to make it into a whole thing and make some money out of it. It became like a little mini tourist thing. And they had like the stuff from the find. They literally went into a landfill and pulled stuff out, and like you got artifacts from the find. And it was hilarious. And it's funny, and I'll quickly get caught up on the comments here. So how's the guard said, the console's worth anything? I think we touched on that a little bit. It just depends on the one. It depends on the scarcity of it.
Box,
you know what would be still, I would think, a pretty tough one to come by? If you got a Virtual Boy in box. That was one that was big, because the Virtual Boy was a flop. People hated it. It was garbage. There's a Nintendo.
Not in television, no.
No, and television they sold enough of them where they're out there, but the Virtual Boy didn't sell well at the time. And I remember checking demo units and Blockbuster and stuff like that, and it's like, it's cool, but it hurts my eyes after like 10 minutes because it's like this 3D thing, but it's like you're staring at black and red, And it's like damaging to your eye, to your retinas. Like it's not good to look at for more than a couple of minutes. Interesting concept. They actually did. It was 3D. It was very cool looking, but you can't look at it for more than about 10 or 15 minutes or your eyes hurt. Terrible game console idea. But a rare piece if you can get a nice condition one in a box, certainly, because not a lot of people bought them. And then there were the experimental units. Nintendo 64 had a disk drive. It was an attachment to Nintendo 64. The original units for that, those are rare. They're tough to come by. They weren't super popular. But if you get your hands on a nice copy, that's worth something. Depends.
Kind of unfortunate that I missed the in 1982. I'm all I graduated. I'm out in the working world, so I missed the video game era, so to speak. I had Pong and all the other stuff, and I think I played in television. That's why I mentioned that.
Yep. In television, by the way, for those who are into the video game world, it was kind of a cool machine. Because that was an era where you could actually have attachments. I don't know if it was in television or the other way around. There was one where you could put an attachment where I think it might have been ColecoVision, where you could put an attachment for television or vice versa. There was one where you could have an attachment so that you could play both systems games on one unit, which is actually very cool. If you think about it, it's rudimentary computing because they're mini computers, but they're very basic. But if you knew how to put the two pieces together and people figured it out, you could do, and they would release this and go like, hey, buy our system. If you like their games, you can buy this attachment and play their games on our system too.
The interesting part about seeing this video, it honestly, and Dustin might like this, is it kind of made me stimulated to go, hey, I wouldn't mind grabbing one game that I kind of remember from when I was a kid, get a nice graded one, because I have a lot of single other things, away from hockey collectibles. And it's just kind of that one thing I was sitting there going, oh, that'd be kind of cool to have. See, and even I can get taken.
I agree. I mean, like for me, and I've got them displayed, like I can see them in my office. And it is just kind of, it's from your childhood. For me, I played a ton of Nintendo. That was the first console that I had when I was 8. I had the original NES. So all those games, every time I look up, get off a bad conference call, whatever, I could look up and smile at that stuff. And it's just, it's cool. But the other thing that's funny, we were talking about this previously, but these games that we played are considered the vintage video games. So like, there's a part of me too that's like, are these like the 52 mantle type stuff? Like in 30 years, like when you watch a documentary from 1990, there's a great one on YouTube. I'll send it to you guys if you haven't seen it, but it's basically like a home recording that this guy did for like his senior project. It's on YouTube and it's from 1990. And he goes around, and his kid's like 18 or something, but he goes around and he interviews all these different sports card people, the dealers and everything else. And they're all like, everybody's buying, Don Mattingly rookie cards, and they don't care about the classics. They don't care about Mickey Mantle. And they don't, and it's like, if you could go back,
I think this one's Cardboard Dreams. I think this one's Cardboard Dreams.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. But it's just funny because we're having all the same conversations today. It's just evolved. It's evolved more.
What is next is the question.
Oh, for sure. I think it's interesting.
Can't collect apps. The millennials. What are they going to do?
Yeah, the digital thing kind of wrecks a lot of that thing. And here's the thing. And this is a legitimate concern. Once you got into the optical disc era with CDs and DVDs and all that, there is such a thing as disc rot. It's not like super prevalent, but there is a certain point at which a spot can develop and you can have, and the discs do biodegrade. It takes a long time, by the way. It's not like a 5 or 10 year process, but over time, some of them can get damaged to the point they become unusable for the ones that are playable. Now, at a certain point, you're not really going to use optical disc games realistically. If you're really a fan of the game, you're probably going to emulate it as the emulators get better. Like if you really this is the other thing that video games have that's problematic. The love of the physical item is cool, but at a certain point, if you just want to play the game, you don't have to have the physical item because the different companies are incentivized to offer you. And by the way, the digital version is like, in some cases, not in all, but in some cases can be pixel perfect to the original. So if you just want to have a nostalgic moment and play Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, you can. And you can play it on your newer console. And it only uses the 2 buttons because that's all you needed for the original. Just do your thing, beat up Glass Joe, and proceed from there. So it can be done. If you just want the experience, that's where emulation comes into play. But if you want the physical possession of the physical item, that's a different kettle of fish. The cartridges have actually had more staying power than the optical. But the
think that's
optical are different games.
I think that's the difference between the nostalgia feeling that people have. You know, you collect your stuff of your era because you feel
Sure.
nostalgic for the 80s. I feel
Yeah.
nostalgic for the 70s.
Yeah.
So we all have our so-called vintage, right?
Yeah.
So, and what is the next one to come? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, it's going to get increasingly complicated because at a certain point, you're going to have a generation that grew up on digital downloads from the beginning.
Yes.
Are you going to be nostalgic about that hard drive that happened to have your whole game? Because is that
Remember TikTok when they had this thing? Yeah.
it's that USB, bro? It's that USB.
Oh, maybe.
So quickly, I'll get caught up here. Carver Max says, hello, Carver friends. Good evening, Carver Max. Eric had the ET game and it sucked. He didn't like it. I thought it was below average. The problem is it was a big property. The problem is that Atari paid a lot of money to Steven Spielberg for the license, and the game was an average Atari game. Well, the problem is you're paying good money not for an average Atari game. And Atari's Atari. It has limitations.
And the developer
whipped it
basically
together
to defend himself. He's like, look, they gave me literally like 2 months to make this game, and it should have taken me I should have had 6 months, and I had 2 kind of thing for Christmas.
Yeah.
Had to be out for Christmas, you know.
But imagine you paid millions of dollars and are like, yeah, just whip it together in a couple of weeks. It's like, do you want it to suck? Is that like your goal in life?
Are most of those games based off the same format of a lot of other games too?
You're very limited in what you can do with the hardware, but some of them who took time could actually extend it as far as it could go with the limitations of, you can't get great sound. You only got these pixels. But you could make a game that was at least fun for people to play. I'll give you a simple example. Pac-Man. Simple game, right? The Atari version is garbage. It's one of the worst versions. And Pac-Man should have been a slam dunk. This is easy. People love this in the arcade. They're throwing quarters into the machine. Atari is not that sophisticated, but you're telling me you can't replicate Pac-Man on Atari? How bad are you at this?
Yeah, I remember that. There was one that came out that was really awful, and then they upgraded it, I guess, on that next version or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, Mrs. Pac-Man was the good.
That was but I'm saying like in the arcade, both were good, but in the retail version, garbage. Absolute trash. And it's like, this is a slam dunk, guys. It's not like it's a rocket science game. Like, have the man go out, eat things, then the ghost chase after him until he gets it, and then boom, he chases after the ghost. This isn't overly complicated. Make it simple. Apparently not. Apparently not. And he says high score. Triggerfinger says he's got a challenge for you. How do you spell hockey? Can you do it?
Unbelievable. Triggerfinger's everywhere.
Yeah, he is. He is.
He is everywhere.
He did send me a good meme on Dapsman, though. I'll give him his credit. He sent me a good meme on Dapsman, and I do appreciate it. So thank you for that, Triggerfinger. Appreciate it. Video game space seems to be mirroring the sports car market. Yeah, that's kind of the point. So the overriding point that I'm making here is it is interesting. The collector's universe angle is interesting. My point with showing you guys these different hobbies is not because but I go, you're going to see parallels. If you were interested in kind of following like, are you guys literally falling down the same path we followed? That's why I'll use the coin market thing all the time. It's like, guys, they did this 20 years ago. They did this 30 years ago. They did this already, including Jim Halpert. Hey, Jim. So it's like, they've done this already. They've been down this road. All you got to do is just pay attention. Like it's there for you if you want to pay attention. If you don't want to, I understand. But like, it's interesting for us because for the video game guys, it's new. For those of us that have been around the sports card space, it's like, you're down this path, are you?
But we're in the content world now, where more people are, paying attention to what's going on out there, and they're looking for good content. And
well, it's a big deal. If you think too, now Golden Auctions is going to run their first video game auction is coming up, and that's. I mean, if anybody can market, it's Ken Golden, So, I mean, the masses are about to learn about it.
I'll skip ahead a little bit. So I did show you guys that Super Mario 64, but the ET is also on Ken Golden's most recent Instagram post. The conspiracy deepens, allegedly. I say allegedly.
The timing's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Well, that's why I said, like, guys, again, I to reiterate to those who are just joining in, I'm not accusing Nat Turner of anything. I'm not accusing Collectors Universe of anything. I'm saying there are some questions to the predecessor, and now it's Ken Golden, and now it's Golden Auctions that are kind of taking over that space. I'd be curious to see what Heritage has to say because they had their buddy-buddy relationship, and now Golden would probably be the preferred auctioneer of WATA games going forward. Again, I simply pose the question. I'd be curious what their thoughts would be on that matter. But also,
to be if they own them.
Exactly. But also, I would point out, and this is kind of just, again, food for thought. This is food for thought above all else. I would be very weary if I was not in those guys, I hope you did do your due diligence. I hope you did. I don't know if you did or you didn't. I assume you did. I have to assume you did, but I hope you did, because even though it's not my department, in my world, I work in the bank and I work in the procurement world, and I work specifically adjacent to the risk side of procurement world. And all it is an entire department dedicated to making sure that business relationships, not buying, just relationships, making sure that all the relationships, you've considered all the risk factors, including reputational risk. Does simply our association with you put us at reputational risk? That is an entire group that focuses in on that one thing. That's part of due diligence. So while I don't engage in it, I am familiar with the due diligence side because I have to build programs that play into that.
And
they ask the questions.
That's what all these blogs are about.
Yeah, but that's due diligence. That's in any business. That's Collectors Universe is not exempt from that. A bank has a very high standard. They got to make sure, like, we have to cover, because they're super regulated. You have to make sure you have covered this. You've documented it. You've covered. And so if something happens, you can be like, we dug into this. We dug into this. We left no stone unturned. If they still hid something from us, at least we've got coverage. In this universe, is it just a relationship? Did they just get along with Dennis and say, like, let's make sure your financials are good? Yep, your financials are good. Okay, great. Let's make the deal. Did you dig into the rest of it at all? That's a question. I don't have the answer to it. So Scott Pilgrim Games is one of the more known examples. There are more than a few lost Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games. Transformers, yep. The big IPs are always key. I always like to have physical copies of the games. My kids like rifling through stacks of games, which is exactly my thing. My brother and I did. It's come full circle. Very good. This was Eric's point about Golden having the E.T. story. Yep, TMN and Arcade and Simpsons, but they up and disappear like a fart in the wind. Nice.
Dustin, this is turning into part 2 for you.
This is great. I love it.
But I thought the topic still warranted the discussion, because you can reach into that world very easily now.
Easy.
The links is easy. Now we don't have to. It's not a reach for us. They brought it to us. Yeah. We didn't have to go there. They brought it over here.
I'm reaching right now, almost.
Yeah. But it's like,
and you have to think too, like, think of all the different collectibles out there. We've got, and now we've got sports cards, we've got comic books, and now there's a microscope on video games of all things. Like, I mean, there's VHS and there's all sorts of different things, but Collectors Universe is focused on video games. That's what they're doing. So, I mean, and Golden Auctions is running auctions on it. And, I mean, it'll be interesting and fun to watch. I mean, it'll be good content for us to talk about, I suppose. It'll be,
well, you got at least 400 or 500 videos in you for this, don't you?
Oh, at least tonight.
Easily. But let me pose a couple of questions to you, Dustin, because this will play well into this whole thing. Again, Let's pretend the worst case scenario. Let's pretend they didn't do their diligence. I'm not going to blame Collectors Universe for the sin of the predecessor company. I can't. That's unfair. But let's pretend you didn't do your due diligence, which, by the way, is bad. You have to do your if you're going to get into business directly by buying them, you should have dug into. If there's skeletons in the closet, you should know what they are. You should, of all people, know what they are. But let's give them complete amnesty from this. Let's say they, for whatever reason, didn't ask the right questions. They didn't catch it. Now it's a problem for them, because now people are going to be asking questions of them. Collectors Universe is going to get these questions. They have to answer for it. So now they're in that world. Short term, that is going to bring into question some of the future auctions. It's going to bring into question some of this until population reports come in, until some of this other transparency comes into play. That's going to be a big thing. But here's the question. Let's assume the worst case scenario. And again, I'll absolve Collectors Universe of any actual wrongdoing other than simply not digging deeply enough. That still puts a chink in the armor of your business acumen. Because Collectors Universe, PSA and all this, so Nat and those guys are in. Everybody talks about how smart Nat is. He is. Everybody talks about what a great businessman he is. He is. But if you drop the ball on this one, do I still have as much confidence in you to be able to fix the issues that PSA has? Because they've still got a gigantic backlog. That isn't fixed. He wants to bring in those lower price levels, but to do so now would be suicide. We give him the halo, like you mentioned with Dennis. Because he's a collector, we give him a halo. Because people like him, we give him a halo. Because he's very friendly and great, and he comes on and does interviews with people, we give him a halo. But maybe you're good at business, but maybe this is a different kind of business, and it isn't the kind of business you came from. You don't have to be good at every type of business, by the way. Really good business people sometimes have blind spots, and they enter into space and say, I actually don't know what I'm doing here. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Like, I'm just posing the question.
And PSA is, they're still not online till what? Next March, April? Till
At the rate they're going, it'd be well into next year. before they'd even be in striking distance.
I know for me personally, I would, and granted, I'm on kind of a mission for what I want, but if WATA goes on massive clearance, I'm buying as many as I can. And the reason why that is because I just can't find them. I can't find them raw, let alone graded, so if they go on now, I'm not saying that they're not out there. They might be in. But
well, if we had the game swaps, Dustin, I probably could have hooked you up because I used to see the black boxes all the time.
Yeah, and maybe they're just stashed away, and they I'm sure they are, and it's just, I guess, a question of will they ever come out, But for me, it's more about the preservation and having it kind of. I mean, the grade is semi important. I'd like to know kind of the quality of the box and everything else, but if I could get it at a discount, if that was the case, then I would still buy that stuff, and then just try to figure out maybe it's eventually regraded with VGA or regraded somewhere else or whatever, but. Yeah, it would be more about just getting the copies because they're not there yet. Now, I'm not saying that they're not out there. They're out there, but the collectors are stingy and they're not getting rid of them. So,
that's
and
a
also,
legitimate issue. Yeah.
If you look at the cost of WATA grading now, we just looked at it. I think minimum is $170 for the speed run.
Yes.
At a minimum, I mean, the games I'm buying, the black box games that are graded, the CIB complete in box, they're in the $300 to $500 range. So. It's like if I go buy a raw copy that I don't know if it's counterfeited or whatever. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if there's something wrong with it that I can't see. Then you add in the cost of grading. It's like I'm not, I'm looking at my downside risk, and it's like I'll just pay it. I mean, it's not that I'm not in that $1 million game. I'm not even buying 10,000, 5,000, and the most I've spent on a game is 1,000, and it's for the Mario stuff. But but that's it, so I'm not a high roller to where I'm really watching this closely, I guess.
Sure. But where you're talking about though plays into the reason why third-party grading is a thing in the first place. It was funny because from Burbank, the card father, I forget his actual name, but he did an Instagram live a little bit earlier today where he was talking about third-party grading, and he goes like, guys, I've got these showcases full of raw cards. You don't need to send in. And he was actually railing against third-party grading. And he goes, guys, I buy this stuff. That. Yeah, it was a very interesting discussion.
It kind of shocked me. I didn't, and maybe I should have realized it, but I didn't, and just be based on their volume. But he was saying like 75 to 80% of their business is raw cards.
Of course.
Numerically,
that makes perfect sense. He's got 43 million cards. They're not all going to be graded.
On eBay, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not all going to be graded. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But now, it was amazing.
Now, one counter that I would give is that, and I buy from Burbank Cards. They've got some stuff that I'm interested in from time to time. They don't always have the lowest prices, to be fair. But be that as it may, what Dustin's talking about, though, is that when you're buying from an online retailer, sight unseen or whatever, having that third party look at it gives you at least a little bit more of an assurance. Burbank does a great job at having tons of inventory listed on eBay, tons. So you can find a lot of great stuff, no doubt. Here's the thing though, and his points were valid, very fair points. But I would point out to him, he goes, here's the thing though, if I'm in your store, what you're saying is great because I, as a collector, am very comfortable looking at these cards, handling them, assessing the grade for myself, and then maybe making an offer. Because even if it's a new card, but it's got a corner ding, I might still want the card, but I also want a discount.
Right.
But you have scans, but you're also scanning a card and maybe you got 5 copies of the card and I don't know which copy I'm getting.
Yeah.
So it's like, I might get a damaged version and be like, okay, this is okay, but can you send it back? Send me one of your other 5 copies that's not as dinged up.
One of your other 5 near mint cards. Yeah.
Yeah, because now
they do stay great, I think, but you don't. They all kind of.
Yeah, it's okay for him to say when you're in the store. But when you're not in the store and you're operating through eBay or whatever, very important thing, then we get to play our new game. We get to quibble about grade. Was your scan good enough? Was it a big enough scan? Was I able to see all the edges? And I'll give a concrete example. I'll give a concrete example.
Oh no, we're going back to the 90s.
Yeah. No, this is 2018. You're wrong. So anyway, so this one here is basically a card I picked up, and I picked it up for a fair price. I can already make a profit on it as is. As it currently stands, I can make a profit on this card from what I paid for it. However, if I put it on eBay as is, my scans had better be gigantic. They had better be like, 5,000 DPI, or I'm going to get somebody who's like, I found a scratch after staring at it for 45 minutes at 500x with a loop and a light that could beam light to space. And I'm like, You paid $80 for it. What's the issue? The PSA 10 is like $400, and it's like, but I wanted a 10. It's like, it's going to cost you $250 to grade it anyway, so shut up. The problem is, the problem is because I can't send it. The easy thing for me to do, if it was available, would have been 2 years ago. I could have sent this into PSA, send it in through, Len Potty and PSA Canada here. It would cost me $25 US. Send it in. It takes a couple of months. I get it back. It's graded. Maybe it comes back a 9. This copy seems pretty nice to me. I was looking it over. Borderline 10, maybe a 9. I didn't see any major flaws to it. Centering's usually an issue with these. So centering's usually the big thing.
Yeah, the die cuts are tough.
Yeah, they are. So that's what I mean. Like, I'm going to assume a 9. But a 10 has got an outside shot. But if that's the case, but as soon as I put it in that holder, the crying about condition goes away. Dude, it's already in the holder. You don't agree with the grade, that's fine. But it's already in the holder.
And when it's like this, that's such a massive difference between today and 30 years ago. Like in 1990, we'd be arguing in the card shop. It's near mint. Yes. No, it's not. Yes. It's mint. It's not near mint.
That's why I said, oh no, we're going back to the 90s.
But that's what I'm getting at.
What grade is it?
So
7.
I understood Burbank's point. And if we're in the store, then I can have that discussion with you in person, face to face. We'll talk about it for 10 minutes, come to a conclusion. Either I'll buy it or I don't.
One thing too that WATA does, and Carlos, you know this, that VGA doesn't do. I think this is important, Bobby, is like, so on their slab, I guess you would call it, they have a very detailed slab where they talk about production run, whereas VGA does not have that. So like for me, I don't know the first thing about Super Mario Brothers, like first production versus second versus third versus fourth versus fifth, and there's different price points for all of those levels. So if it's first production and it's a 9.8, it's $1 million or whatever, so that's where WATA. Now, whether they're getting all those things right or wrong or whatever, that's up to you to decide, but at least you've got it on the holder. So if you're somebody that doesn't, like if you're me and you don't know the difference and you're learning it, it's on the holder. Whereas with VGA, I'm sending it in and I'm just going to get it the way I'm going to get 85 plus or 90 plus without any context to it. So I think that's more of a selling point or something that WATA has that people like.
Sure. Now, can I pose a question to playing into what you just said, Dustin? So this is kind of fun. And this is a question for you, Bobby. You can enjoy it. You can reveal the mystery. What is behind the curtain? It's all his WATA games. The secret will come out soon. Later. But playing into the question of what you just said, though, it's very true. WATA does give more information on the holder, which is nice. And the holder seems pretty reasonable. I like it for what it is. But I would point out something, and this is kind of fun. Again, playing into the video games hasn't been seen. Yes, collectors video games have been around for a long time, but like the hobby is still so unsophisticated in that sense. If you ask me about M116 cards, well, I already know the answer to some of that because I've studied the different pre-war cards and stuff like that, so I can answer some of M116 questions, some basic ones. But if I need to, I can go over to my shelf here and I can grab my SCD, open it up to the appropriate section, show you Sporting Life, and talk about some of the intricacies of it. If I want to know the differences between those different games, Nintendo Age used to be a big information source for stuff like that. Dustin, if you want to know about the different versions of that Super Mario, where are you going to get that information? What's your reference book?
WATA.
There you go. Because they bought up didn't they take those sites
They did. Yeah. They did. But here's the thing. The problem is it isn't an SCD book they have. It's a website that was crowdsourced where the collectors provided the information, but it was never formalized into a book. We don't have the Burrell. We don't have that. It doesn't exist in that genre. And there are so many tiny nuances to some of these games, legitimate variations that... So who's going to question WATA's unquestionable authority on this? Oh, you want to go check the book? Go ahead. What book?
There's no book.
There's no book. There's no SCDs. There's no real price guides per se. All there is auction results, what WATA says, and whatever you found on Wikipedia. Imagine if that was your hobby and that's how you have to try to figure out what's rare and what isn't rare. Oh my God.
Well, that's what I do.
Yeah, but that's how far back they are. Like they're in that stage where they don't even have the basics set up. Nobody is out there. People are out there who are, but the problem is there's so many systems. There's so many directions, so many areas, so many nuances that it's like, okay, you can find an expert on Nintendo. You could find an expert on Super Nintendo. You could find an expert on Atari maybe, but it's like, You got to get them all in a room, and you got to put it in one book, and it doesn't exist.
It's got to be crowdsourced website again.
You don't have a choice. You don't have another way to do it. It's
Yeah.
not that you want to do it that way. It's that Nintendo Age was that resource, and somebody bought it and yanked it, and now it's gone. And you can't look it up.
Getting back to Dustin and his question or your topic a little bit earlier, we were talking about rarity and what comes in, boxes and what have you, and how many guys are holding on to them. I'm going to relate it to wax again. There's a lot of stuff that was collected way back, like wax packs unopened, let's just say, from the 50s and 60s, they're in collections today, but nobody knows who has them, or that they don't even know they're even out there. They have no idea they exist, but these hardcore collectors are still out there. There's so much information that, as I've shared in the last 25 years, I've been holding a lot of information of, respectfully, of who has what. And I know, and like the collecting community does know, but the whole universe of collectors, they don't know. And so you think, how many are out there? You don't know. You have to ask one guy, two guys, three guys. You'll never really find that out. So until time goes by, I guess you'll find out the population of a lot of things coming to market in the next maybe few years.
And it's just weird to think about stuff that's just lost too. Like a guy's been collecting it. Maybe it's 52 tops, whatever, sealed wax baseball, and it's just lost in time. It's just like, bulldozed or something. I mean, that stuff's got to happen. I mean, it's got to happen to some of this stuff over time.
I lived in a condo for 20 years, and I was on board of the directors, and we would find out when somebody passes away, they would ask us, can you send somebody in to clean out the place? And I went in to clean out this one lady's place, and she had and the family just said, just get rid of it. There was autographs from Marilyn Monroe. There was so much stuff in there. And I just went, hey, this stuff is worth something. Do you not know? There was a lot of collectibles, and they didn't care. They just wanted to sell the unit, take the money, and gone. Everything else went into the dump. Didn't go in the dump.
It's behind the sheet. Now it all comes full circle. Bobby, what's behind the sheet? Is it some collectibles for the find? That's what I was
all
say.
That stuff.
As soon as you said that story, I was like, perfect. We can tie it right into the sheet story. Now we
He's
know.
like, video games?
What are you talking about?
All the sealed Mario games are sitting behind him under the sheet.
What's going to happen is all the $2 million, like, oh, $2 million, how adorable.
I already dropped the interest that I'm interested in video games. So
yeah, I was going to say, now you know.
Am I promoting it or no? I don't know.
It's like, are you pumping it? Are you pumping it?
We'll never know.
So WATA equals water. I'll quickly get caught up on the comments here. Are games from different regions, countries, more or less sought after for collectors? I would say there are some hardcores who like it. For the majority, I would say it's not as sought after, but it's because the demand wasn't so. There were people floating around. I'll use examples because I talked about with Dustin that Mortal Kombat from Sega Master System. In some regions, Master System continued. I think in Brazil, Master System was still like used by people until 2001, like for a long time. Like after Master System was discontinued. No, they were still selling them in some of these weird regions. So they still had use for the games. So for them, it was obviously more useful. So you're probably going to have Brazilian Portuguese versions of some of these games that will produce years and years and years after the North American version. So it's like, so which is rare? I don't know. Let me check my SCD. Oh, wait, I can't. I don't know.
That happens in the movie posters, right? Movie posters from other countries are some sought after, but other ones, nobody cares.
There's so much information we don't know about. And there's a lot of stuff we can make educated guesses, but even the experts in the field are like, there's so much to know. Because these systems and games were sold in regions. The Sega Saturn failed in North America, but in Japan, they have a much bigger library of games. Some really good games, because in Japan, they still liked it. So they were able to sell way more games. They've got like 800 or 900 games. But like in North America?
A collecting community there? Or is there a big thing?
It's the collecting community for games in general was small for the longest time. Maybe a couple more $2 million sales, and maybe, hey, some of those Japanese imports, I got some. as soon as y'all are ready, I'm in, because you could get the games cheaper. Because if you had the little cartridge that let you play the imported games, you could get some of the more expensive games, Japanese versions, because they were cheaper.
Well, that could be an angle too.
Of course,
coming in and once you get past that saturation point, you go, now I can look for the finite little things.
Yeah, there's a black box game that I needed, that I want for that set, and I saw it, and it's like the price point was low, and I'm like, why is this available? Like, why, I don't understand it. And it's a Spanish version, and that's, I guess that's the reason. But I contemplated, I'm like, do I really care if this is the Spanish version? Like maybe because I mean it's the same box, it's the same everything, it's just a Spanish version. I'm like, maybe I should get that because I can't.
Hablo español, Dustin. Hablo español.
I need to learn some
Si,
Spanish.
senor.
Yeah.
Get it.
But if you can get the game for a price, if you can get the game for a price that's reasonable as a collector, the reason why those imports became viable is that some people actually wanted to play the games, and the imports were cheaper because the game was already super popular in North America, and the game had become rare enough that it was expensive. But you get the import and you get it for a third the price. It's the exact same game. Yeah. Oh, but what if I can't read Japanese? Well, some of these games have such simple menu systems, you're basically reading it in English anyway. Yeah. If you just want to play the game, you can play it perfectly fine.
Right.
Some of them, yes, some of them, no. It just depends.
That's the next level it's going to, Dustin. So, hey, be on the bandwagon or not.
All right. Maybe I'll go back to that one.
Yeah, so but it's a possibility.
What was that again?
Yeah, exactly.
I can't say it's on there. It's live. It's live.
So the collector here is hitting the nail on the head. The coin market basically created third-party grading because they were first to market on this idea. They were early. That's why I say learn from these other hobbies. Don't ignore them. Pay attention. There's some lessons to be. You don't have to borrow all of it, but there are some lessons to be learned if you want to pay attention. Information's there for mail order to assure, which is true. I used to collect coins pretty bit because that's why I have reference materials with coins. I would still do it, except my dollar only stretches so far. I can't do all of these things at the same time. Yeah. It's impossible. I have to draw the line somewhere. But if you said, Carlos, you can never collect another card again, fine, I'll go back to coins because some of them I enjoyed collecting, some of the series and stuff I had done my research and study into. I don't mind. I can do it. But like, it's easy enough to collect the cards. It's fine. But if I had unlimited money, I would get some of those coins as well. But the thing is, third-party grading, I remember when you used to have to do it mail order. Well, you imagine what eBay is with the crummy screenshots. How about opening up a mail order catalog and you get a grainy black and white photo and you're trying to base condition on that? Really?
Well, you'd have to take the word of the seller at that point.
And they had auctions that were telephone auctions. You're doing all your bidding by telephone. And you can't see the damn thing. You're like, oh, it's an MS-65. Really? Is it? I don't know. You're hoping for the best.
So it sounds like it was definitely needed
for that market. Now, here's the thing. Third-party grading in every single market is a lubricant to sale. The example I used a second ago. I could sell this. And if I get a buyer who isn't too fussy and looks at the scans I give and just accepts it for what it is, we'll complete the transaction. Or if I do it in person with somebody who's an experienced collector, they look at the card, they make a decision, we come to a deal, great. But if I go on eBay, there's a bunch of folks who will stand there, take 2 hours staring at it at the highest magnification, they'll find one scratch on the surface, it's not a PSA 10, and they'll send it back. It's a pain in the ass. Why do I need to deal with that?
And then you'll have to answer 15 messages from these guys.
All the time. I used to get messages all the time. It's like, oh, can you, take 50 scans and do it from this DPI and do all this? It's like, dude, it's a $50 card. My time is not worth that.
The sad part is you'd think like, hey, if you have an issue, ask a question. Anytime anyone asks me a question, I don't even bother. I'm like, this is going to be a return. You don't even. It's like you want to answer questions, but then in the back of your mind, you're like, do I really want to bother with this? Because like you said, it might be a $10 card or a $20 card or something.
For some of those low dollar cards, it's like, guys, and I'm not saying this to be mean because because of the job I do, I'm a spoke on the wheel at where I work, like a lot of other folks. But to answer a question on a $20 card, I would make more money eating my lunch than answering your question on a $20 card. And when I say eating my lunch, I mean eating it quickly and then watching a bunch of YouTube. Like, it's not worth it. Like the money, the margins aren't there.
There's more questions asked on $20 cards than there are on $50 or $100 cards. It's amazing. The lower the item goes, because you're into more conditional issues, right? Mm-hmm. Especially with cards, you're talking creases. How far does that crease go through? Because it's a 3 and it's $10 card. Yeah. But when you get in the upper tier, you say no crease. It's like eliminates all that question marks. So
well, the thing the third party grading does for you is it eliminates the necessity for you to commit to a grade. I consider myself to be a pretty good grader in the sense that I'm meticulous in what I'm looking at. However, as soon as I commit to a grade, if you stand there and stare at it long enough, you'll probably find a flaw that I didn't do because I didn't stare at it for 5 hours. But
Yeah,
if I
you kind of
stare,
want that, and the whole like buy the card, not the grade thing.
Yeah.
But especially for modern, ultra modern, you're like,
Yes.
but that's the whole reason why I'm getting it graded, so I don't have to look at it.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
do
funny.
the I do the staring at it prior to submitting it for grading.
Right.
But that's why my threshold now is that I'm very hesitant to put a card up for auction on eBay unless it's a vintage card, unless it's a beat up vintage card that is very clearly, low condition, in which case I'll just call it what it is. I'll call a spade a spade. But if it's a modern card, I want it to be graded because I don't want to deal with the questions.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, the grade is on the label of the holder. If you're not satisfied with that, cool, take it up with BGS, take it up with PSA, take it up with SGC. That was their assessment of it. I do not commit to a grade on my listing. I just won't. And I also make sure they're high enough dollar-wise. They're probably going to have to be $75 to $100 minimum for me to even list it because I'm going to put tracking on it. I'm not leaving anything to chance. Like I'm putting up cards that are at least enough money for me to justify tracking because otherwise I'm not sending it to you. Oh, but you could send it white envelope. Nope.
Yeah, I've never used the white envelope thing because I'm like, I just don't want to bother with that.
In 1998, I would have, Dustin. In 1998, we did those transactions all the time. It was fine. But that was before everybody and their brother returned everything.
Yeah.
Today, it's like, no. It's going to be in a padded envelope. Everything's going to be nicely packed away. I'm putting tracking on it. And as soon as I ship it, I'm putting the tracking number on the thing. You can track it yourself. You don't need to ask me. I gave you the tracking number. When it arrives, I'll leave you feedback. You leave me feedback. We're cool. This transaction's over.
I had a question today. The guy says, I was selling an 88 top set. And the guy goes, because in my title I say minty, and he goes, what does minty really mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of like, if I have to tell you, I don't think I'm going to make this. I did sell to somebody else, but I mean,
Yeah.
minty, what does it's like, they're so nice. I'm not getting into this grade, half the percentage is this, and they're minty. They're like brand new. If you find a
Bobby,
flaw,
that's
good
what
centering,
Burbank
whatever.
is trying to condemn us to.
I
He's
think
telling
so.
us to get away from the third party grading. It's like, Burbank, do you not understand? We can't do that because as soon as we do that, we have to answer these dumb questions. We can't do it. Look, you've got 43 million cards. You've got people that you hire to deal with those dumb questions you don't want to deal with. I don't have that luxury, sir.
Well, raw is actually becoming more affordable in the sense
It
that
is.
if you get a little bit more experience with what you're looking at, you can buy raw at a fraction of the cost
Oh,
and
for
still
sure.
have the card and still be the collector. And you don't have to get into the grading game.
No, for
And-
sure. If you're a collector, there's some bargains to be had, some opportunities to be had. What I'm getting at is that if you're a person who wants to consolidate, you want to move on some cards, it becomes very problematic if you do not have the graded card. It just becomes more of a nuisance. Like it depends on the item, but
Then you grade it then. Because
But that's
by
what I
that
mean.
time, PSA should be ready, right?
that's what you're hoping for, basically. That's what you're hoping for. So,
Do
so
you
my brother
buy,
here,
Dustin, do you buy ungraded games? Or
I have not. I've contemplated that for certain ones. I might do that to kind of just complete the set. If I'm down to 4 or 5 games or something, and I'm only seeing raw copies, if I can find here's the funny thing though, is a lot of times now, especially I think with now the $1 million Mario game, the raw copies are more expensive than the graded ones.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah, and I don't know if the raw copy is I don't know the condition. I don't have all the the stuff that a grading company would help with. But it might come down to that, though. It might come down where I'm just like, okay, maybe I just buy it raw and I grade it myself or whatever.
but that's where we get back into the. So unfortunately, what I'll say is this: we'll put a button on this piece. The hardcore collectors are right on this. So this is why I thought it would be kind of a fun topic. In addition to it's like Bobby, video game collecting is that last bastion of they're trying to defend the fort from the speculators because they're in at an early enough stage where third-party grading is still new enough and enough games are not in that category where they're trying to fight for it, going like, no, it doesn't make any sense. They're trying to get the exposés and everything out. And I'm like, no. It's like, it's a lie, sir. It's a lie. They're trying to stop it at trying to hedge it. It's not going to stop it completely. I guarantee that. But there is a case to be made that for a lot of these games, there's no justification. I don't care how much the Erics of the world, buddy over here with his WATA collection tries to say otherwise. If that game was $6,000 sealed for years, that was the market. That's what it was. The collector said, "I'll pay you $6,000. That's as high as I'm willing to go." But why not 10,000? Why not? Why would I do that?
That's why those guys were complaining. The collector saying, "I'm so mad because I can't collect now because everything's risen. The bar has risen. I can't afford all this stuff. I'm just a casual hobbyist, and they want to stay in the hobby, and this takes them out of the hobby. That's why you can't get kids in the hobby today. It's very hard because everything the bar has risen so high that kids can't even buy packs in a variety store."
Well, actually, go ahead.
Go ahead, Carlos.
All I was going to say was, and this maybe you can touch on this one as well. This is what's going to be interesting about this, though. When we're talking about a lot of these games and systems, they all have their era and their time period. Atari games had a heyday there where some people nostalgically went back to Atari because that was their era. Then Nintendo had its era. Then Super Nintendo had its era. And we're moving closer and closer to the optical disc games getting into that category time-wise from the age of the people that are going into it. But as they entered into that next phase, when Nintendo became the rage, Atari kind of fell off. Because it's like, well, I didn't really grow up with Atari. I had Atari games, but that was because Carlos Sr. went to garage sales. He got some Atari games and we played them. So we actually played them. So but am I nostalgic for, a Missile Command? Is it that important to me to have a box Missile Command? No, not really. It was a fun game.
Dungeons and Dragons, I remember playing.
Yeah. So it's like, are there some games that were enjoyable? Yes, but I can get a cart still for a couple of bucks. If I just want, the nostalgia of I could get myself a Missile Command cart, an Atari one for a couple bucks. It's not that crazy. Less than $5 if I go get it inside of a game store. Not a big deal because it was a very common game, not a crazy rarity. But do I need the scarcities? No. They made a ton of Atari games, licensed, unlicensed, all kinds of stuff. Nintendo, I have much fonder memories of. Are there certain games that I would love to have that are priced out? Absolutely. The original Double Dragon would have been a great one. That was an awesome game. Awesome game. Great. Phenomenal. Double Dragon 2 was also a fun one. Both of those. Those two right there, great. Fantastic. But not everything. It's like, but would I pay like the premium? No, I'm not going to pay the premium. Complete in box would be fun if it was priced accordingly, but I would have to judge it based on, again, if I was in a game swap scenario, I go take a look at it. I judge the grade myself. I probably just buy a complete in box as is. You put it in the holder, I'm probably not paying you that much of a premium, but that's me. Somebody else is like, oh man, I'll pay double for it. It's yours.
Yeah, I see people that are in these groups that are set collecting certain things. So we've talked about Mega Man, for example. So they might have like the 10 or 11, however many Mega Mans they made, and they're looking specifically for like 8.0 or better. So kind of a similar as what you would see with like a PSA registry where they're going for a certain grade or higher. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. That was something where people are collecting kind of the set of something. I think that with Nintendo, so part of kind of like protecting against my downside risk, I suppose. Now, where I think I'm probably a little vulnerable here is who's going to want Gumshoe, the original Gumshoe Nintendo black box game in 30 years? Maybe nobody. If it's part of a set, then maybe because it's part of a set, but it's kind of a common, I suppose. Whereas Mario, Luigi are kind of the stars of that group. I guess if I was just strictly kind of investing or thinking of it, I would just stick solely with Mario, just stack Mario games or something, because I think with Nintendo World opening in Japan and in Orlando, I think the Mario IP is going to be kind of like one of those multi-generational things. My son is 6. He plays Super Mario Brothers from 1985. So I do think that I get, and it's obviously purely speculation, but it's going to continue on. Now, whether or not they care about this stuff, I think it'll just be cool to have anyway. Like be an 80-year-old man and be like, wow, there's like, people used to actually have cartridges for games when it's a completely digital world. And we have like an eyeglass. We have like a glass eye that we play games out of. Everyone's got
the VR headsets. We're already there with the VR headsets. So we're moving in that direction. And we're also moving to download. Because there is the aspect of it from the manufacturer standpoint. If you're charging the same amount for the download, you don't have to make a disc. You don't have to make a case. You don't have to design really box art.
Well,
You can
it's
make
funny
like a
too
graphic.
when you look at like a Nintendo cartridge, it's this big, and now you have a Switch game that's this big. Like it just keeps getting smaller. Everything's getting smaller.
Yeah, and but you touched on the key point though. I would say the video game market has the biggest danger in that as it becomes decreasingly required to have the physical, because if the intention here is the game experience, emulation can do that, or
Right.
downloads can do that, and you can get it on every single subsequent system. Because eventually you're going to get the game that's going to go away from the optical disc. We already have versions of Xbox that don't have the optical. I think PlayStation might have a version that's download only as well. It's just the hard drive. And it's really a flash drive. You download it from the thing, you carry it over. Oh, my system broke, replace it. Okay, just download your library. It's in the cloud. You don't need it. Now, does that mean it's forever? Nope, it isn't. But the reality is that if your intention is to play the game, what's the difference? You're getting to play the game. Because the physical disc, I already mentioned, there's a possibility the physical disc could fail. There's a possibility the hardware could fail. That's real. The hardware could fail. The cartridge itself could fail. It's a microchip. Things can happen. It can rust. It can oxidate. Like, you try to take care of it maybe as best you can, but like, guys, there's only so. And by the way, the sealed ones don't even count towards that. You can't even play the damn thing.
Yeah.
Will they turn green?
Not so much. Those microchips are already green, so they already skipped a step. They already skipped a step.
Yeah.
Well, it was Jordan anyway. So yeah.
It's not quite refractor there, but no, that's the reality. Is like, stop showing off. This one here with the extras. Look, you keep this up. I'm going to remind you. I always choose to tell my younger brother my favorite phrase: "What's yours is mine. What's mine is mine, and what's everybody else is mine too." So enough of you. I don't need to hear any more from this. It's like possession is 9 cents of the law, and I will take possession of it if I feel like it. That's the advantage of being the older one. So yeah, 6-year-old loves Mario Brothers and the original to play Odyssey on the Switch. Yeah, for sure. I think you're right though. Mario and those games are going to hold some resonance because the kids will still keep playing them, and they may have memories of them down the road, the later versions, and maybe go back and play some of the older versions. I don't know if that's going to translate though to wanting the cartridge. That's what's going to make the thing tricky.
Right.
It's like, why?
No, and I think it might just be like it's an antique. It's like the first. I think it's going to appeal to the antique collectors, not the gamers necessarily. It's going to be like, wow, that's a piece of history. That's the first Mario game, or what that's people were actually buying these in the store in a cartridge, believe it or not.
That part's fair.
Yeah. So that's but you're right. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, nothing's fair. So,
here's my new acquisition.
He's got a new acquisition.
I got a whole bunch of them.
All right, so I see it's a card game, collectible card game, but what is
Are they Magic the Gathering?
World of Warcraft. Oh my goodness. Look at this guy.
Go figure, eh?
Bobby Burrell getting into all those alternative investments. I see what's going on here.
When you're at Goodwill and they have a stack like this for $3.99, what are you gonna do?
All right.
So I took a risk and actually it paid off. There's a few good ones in there, but Warcraft's a very interesting, different.
The Warcraft, the fans are hardcore, man. You want to talk about an IP? The fans are hardcore. They're insane.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about that. I know a few folks that got dragged into that vortex and maybe never came out.
But they're not so much on the grading aspect as I looked up.
No, I think collectible card games are still new on the grading side of it.
Yeah,
that's not investment advice for anybody, but they are new on the grading side of it. That's just the reality. So who are the Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron of the video game world? Mario. Mario's got to be one of those guys for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Zelda. Zelda would be a good one. Yeah. Nintendo has some of the best ones. I think Kirby is like at a second tier. Kirby's a really good character who's done very well. A lot of the Mario Jason characters. Yoshi is a great character. They love the Yoshi because they've had standalone games.
There's also interest in like the 007 Halo games. Like those are. And they're newer.
Yeah, well, obviously. Halo for sure, and then 007 GoldenEye is the big one.
That's the GoldenEye.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Donkey Kong's a good one, absolutely.
Yeah.
Basically, if you go to Mario Kart, look at the characters on there. Most of them are Mario adjacent. Those are your main top tier characters, most of them. And then go look at Super Smash Brothers, the first early ones. Yeah. Those are your big characters. That Samus from Metroid, that's a great character. Once upon a time, had they not absolutely squandered it with some sequels, Sonic from Sega was one of those characters. It's still there, but I would put it down in a second tier because they've done some bad things to that IP over the years. But the original Sonic games are strong. They're really good. Cool. They're strong.
I like that movie.
Yeah, the new movie is really good with Jim Carrey.
I think that has helped redeem.
Oh no,
it
the other
somewhat.
one, the first one. Who was in the first one with Sonic? That guy.
You mean Jim Carrey?
It wasn't Jim Carrey. It was the other guy.
There's
Jim
only
Carrey
one
was-
Sonic movie that I'm aware of.
Yeah, Jim Carrey was the bad guy.
Yeah, he was Dr.
Oh,
Robotnik.
I was talking about his buddy, the guy who discovered him. I was thinking of him. Sorry.
Right.
Um,
But I think that character, if they can going forward, if they do a better job with the character going forward, Sonic still has some because if you take 90s kids, Sonic
Oh,
was
yeah.
Sonic came with the
Huge.
Sega Genesis. Sonic was like, their mascot. That's what helped propel them to be competitive with Nintendo there for a moment until they lost it all and kind of threw it away.
and it's a good looking Genesis box. Like that original Sonic box is nice. I mean, it's cool looking.
Yes, no doubt. Mario, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, yes. Zelda, yes, absolutely. Donkey Kong, and we talk. Do people collect Game Boy games? There are some hardcore collectors for it.
Mhm.
Almost all the classic systems there are collectors for. The problem is, up until this point, they've been very niche. It has been very niche historically, but of course, grading will take us to the moon. I've been told that now everything will be $1 million. This is what I've been told, and they will all be WATA graded. So, Dustin, prepare for your windfall.
Hey, I mean, I'm pretty well, and I think though that there's also people. It's funny, another like similarity to cards and also comic books. People do this. There's people that are buying Switch games and getting them graded now, to then flip graded copies of brand new games or holding for the long term or whatever, short term, long term or whatever. Kind of similar to what you would see with like a new player, a new modern player or a new variant cover in comic books where it's like, oh, we've got this new variant cover. Let's get it graded, resell it. I mean, there's a lot of that going on too. We're operating in the more distinguished vintage retro game.
Oh, the distinguished vintage, yes.
Yes, we're very distinguished. I should have a cigar or something. No, but there's also a large group of people that are operating in this modern, ultra modern game space too, which I'm not going to mess with that stuff, but it's interesting.
So you remember how I mentioned how the games, video games, they're right now their trajectory and progression are moving. As soon as you start getting into sending in your modern to get graded, but keeping in mind that some of these current games are still in production, that's the junk wax era.
Yes,
That's when you enter into it's like, guys, I'm going to put this away and my kids are going to go through college on this version of the game. It's like, it's still at Walmart right now. I can buy it right now.
And when you think about print runs too, I mean, like Super Mario Brothers on the original Nintendo, they sold 40 million copies of it.
Yes.
So it's not like 89 Upper Deck Baseball, like a few million. 40 million copies were sold.
That's the reason why I pushed back on the Super Mario 64.
Yeah.
Nintendo 64 was not their biggest selling console. Nintendo was, and then Super Nintendo was right up there as well. And then eventually they would break that record later with the Wii and stuff like that. Like they would do very well down the road. But Nintendo and Super Nintendo were a huge 1-2 punch right at the beginning to get Nintendo out of the blocks strong. They were doing great. But that means they sold a ton of those games. Super Mario World came with almost every Super Nintendo unless you had a different version. Super Mario World's common as dirt. Mario Duck Hunt is common as dirt. Like a lot of those are just Super Mario 64 was a launch title. It was the launch title. It's Super Mario in 64.
The one copy that makes sense to me on that front, if we're talking about like $1 million game, is that one, and this is, they might have sold a couple of copies of it, but there was a prototype. You probably heard of this a couple of years ago. And they believe that there was less than 100 of these. It was basically like the prototype Mario Brothers game that came over, like that they tested on like a test copy. That makes sense to me. It's kind of like the Pokemon Illustrator card, where there's 50 of those. Like that makes sense because it's scarce. But Mario World or Mario 64 or whatever. I don't get that one.
But that's what I mean though. That genre is still so young in terms of as a hobby. It's so young that that's why I made reference to. There is no reference book. We know that prototypes are rare because by their nature, they're not supposed to get out. But stuff got out. But it's tougher to get it. It's understandable. Like there's a comprehension to, yes, a prototype should be rarer. Therefore, it's tougher to come by. The World Nintendo Championships, that cart makes sense. They only produced so many for that one specific event. And the people that had them originally were the ones that were involved. And then eventually they sold them off over the years. Those ones are legitimate rarities. If you're a collector, that's a rarity. That's a scarcity for you. That at least is understandable. They have numbers on them. There are ways to authenticate, but there's no reference books. And that's the problem, is that the rest of it, you're just getting, I think there's 100 of them. Based on what? Hearsay in Nintendo Age? Nintendo Age got taken down.
So
It's
do
all
they
crowdsourced.
like those prototypes? Do they consider them as part of the set, or because I'm trying to relate it to sports? You know, a lot of people where there's a short print, an extremely short print, they don't consider that part of the set. Or if I would price it out, I wouldn't consider that part of the set. It's sort of an extra.
Yeah,
You know, because there's
That's a good point. Is it maybe, I don't know, is it like first edition books maybe?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Here would be the comparable that I would use. I would use those prototypes. I would treat them like the T206 set, because the T206 set was printed in pretty abundance in its day. But you would have some color prototypes as well there. You would have ones that would be missing a color, but they'd be in strips. They were like salesman samples and stuff like that. It was stuff that wasn't intended to be in general circulation, but they were supposed to be. They were like examples to say like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're offering here, because you could get uncut strips of some of these samples that got out over time.
Well, I think they were made in strips too.
Absolutely. But I mean, like, these ones were marked a little bit differently. The colors were a little bit different. There was some variation to it, where if you have the two beside the regular version release and the sample, a person who's actually studied the issue could tell you, yeah, that's the sample one.
Stone lithography back then. Just, you know, color, touche, all the others.
There was some variance to it.
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
And then you could have the ones where one color was missing. The rest of it would be fine, and you'd notice, oh, the border isn't there. Why? Because one of the colors didn't make it through.
Yeah.
That's tougher to come by. That's rare. Most of them were supposed to be destroyed, but that's not part of the set. That's
they're just errors, really.
Correct.
True enough, but rare in the sense.
Yeah.
Right?
That's why I say samples and stuff like that would be the direction that I would take with it. It's similar to a prototype. I would take a sample in the same vein as a prototype.
But does, you know, definitely rarity rules. Price will rule on that for sure. I'm sure they go for a lot of money.
Like,
right?
Yeah, for games, they're definitely looking at earliest release. So if the sample copy was the first one to come over, then that's what they're going to care about. If the sample came, later, then they probably wouldn't care. I assume that to be the case, because the way that and Carlos makes a good point. We don't really know. I mean, these are kind of guidelines that are set, but
everything is an educated guess. And by the way, the people that are trying their best to make a reasonable guess, but it's still a guess.
Yeah, they're breaking it down by like for the Super Mario game, they're breaking it down to like, okay, this one was released fall of '85. This one was released spring of '86. This one, and that's how and based on the fact that this box is a round seal of quality. The later ones have an oval one, and then the cartridge has 3 screws compared to 5 screws, and there is a lot of studying that's gone on, but it gets confusing because sometimes you'll have, it's typically that 5 screws were earlier production, 3 screws are later, but there are some games where it's flipped, so it's like, that makes it even harder to keep tabs on. I would think it's
interesting you say that, Dustin, because with the other collectibles that are more 3-dimensional plastic or whatever, we can see the progression where they started out really good quality and then the quality suffers and you go, oh, but it's different variation, different. It's just through the years they got a little smarter and said, well, the plastic doesn't need to be that thick. Let's make it a little thinner, cut our costs down. Because first time out of the gate you want the best product, and then you're just like, hey, this thing's selling like crazy. How can we lower our costs?
Yep.
So they make it a little less screws. 5 to 3. Hey, well, now we can attach them better. We're more prepared for it. So seeing that it's kind of relative, and being a historian, that's the stuff that I really look for in the things that I document. So
part of the tricky thing with the nuances is that part of Nintendo's pricing model was that developers would develop the games, Nintendo would basically approve the games, Nintendo would provide the cartridges. So you're getting all your cartridges from the same source. Now, what if they find some cases of the different screw variant? Oh, we got some extra of these. Yeah, send them those. It was intended to be certain sequencing, but what if there's some extra at the warehouse and it came out of sequence? From the developer's perspective, does it make a difference? 5 screws, 3 screws? It's the same chipset. It's the same game, but you're getting the materials from one source who then charges you by the cartridge. So Nintendo is like providing that end of the spectrum. That's another way they made money, even on the games they didn't develop.
Because no kid cares. It's just, and there we go.
Exactly.
That's right.
But the problem is, all those things we're talking about, all the scholarship on it, is kind of individual collectors who focus on their niche and we're able to figure out little pieces of the puzzle. Nobody has the full puzzle. Nobody's compiled the full puzzle.
Well, I think they're going to start very soon. I think it's matured to that point,
Oh, yeah.
especially with the price points, that people will come together and people will share that information. And it's really important going forward because a lot of those guys who work there are still around today.
Yes.
Yeah,
You know?
there's people that have that knowledge. It's just a matter of compiling it.
Yeah.
I would
That's
say.
that is the biggest advantage they have in that hobby, is that there is still a chance to talk to folks at Nintendo and talk to folks at this thing who may be willing to give you some insight, and you may be able to garner that research if you're so inclined. That's where that hobby is going to need someone like yourself, Bobby, who's willing to go there, like ask those questions, because they'll probably tell you. A lot of it is like, at this point, that system is from 35, 40 years ago. They're like, yeah, sure. This is more or less what we did. This is some of that. Because it's not proprietary concern anymore. They're making money on it hand over fist in all these other areas. Like, we own the IP. You can't make copies of it. So we'll give you some information. It's fine.
It's not the recipe for the secret sauce or anything. You know, it's just, and you know, some workers just work there. I talked to a lot of Opeachy employees who worked there back from the 50s up. And the stuff they told me, just the small little things, it's like, oh, wow, now that makes sense. And if you find that guy, it's everything.
It's a fascinating genre. So real quick,
It
I'll
is.
get caught up on this.
I think
Trigger
so.
says, how does esports play in the video game future? It'll keep it popular, but it's not going to do too much for the hardware. That's the only problem, is a lot of the esports are stuff that you can download games. That keeps it popular because esports, I think, will continue to get popular. Here's the angle I would see. If esports is going to do anything long term, it may grow the desire for esports cards. There's already some of that out there. That would be the area where maybe, if you're going to have something physical, it's going to be esports jerseys, esports cards, esports merch. Less so the games, because the games that your esports favorites are playing are games they downloaded on Steam. They're playing it on Twitch. They're doing this, that, and the other. It's all digital. They're not putting the Nintendo game in the cartridge, blowing on it to get her going, and then let's do this. So it's gonna be interesting to see what it does. I think I think games will continue to be popular. I think kids will continue to enjoy games. It's going to be the format that's going to change. It's going to be the format, but the actual act. I think the games will still remain popular for sure. And they're talking about the McDonald's staff trading cartridge and talking about that back and forth a little bit here.
There is an element too with the box art on some of that older stuff, especially too when you think about. I know this is kind of like it's not the same thing, but look at the popularity of CryptoPunks. You know, where it's literally an 8-bit character that people are paying millions of dollars for, to put on their profile. And what are the original 8-bit characters? It's these boxes. I mean, like it's these characters, these vintage game characters. So I know that's kind of a stretch. We're talking about CryptoPunks, but it's 8-bit. It's essentially kind of that 8-bit, configuration.
But Dustin, an NFT, if you've got the right tutorials, you can make an NFT for about $50. So Personal Finance Dad, a cartoon Personal Finance Dad, could be an NFT for about $50 and some Ethereum.
Actually,
I'm just putting it out there.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to announce it on your show tonight.
There it is.
I was getting there.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I was already there. We already knew he's a wizard. It's time for the wizard to start making you some money. Like we covered this. Like, get on it, man. Let's go.
I've only minted 10 million of these. They're limited edition.
That's basically scarce right there. That's basically scarce.
In a digital world, it's endless.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people need to stop paying for microtransactions. That ship, my friend, has sailed. That is a very viable business model. All right. So believe it or not, we got a lot of mileage out of that topic. I was actually very impressed. So real quick, let me touch on something. If you guys got any last second questions about this general topic, by all means, feel free to throw them in the chat. By the way, thank you for the comments. Some phenomenal stuff. Appreciate you. And really, and thanks to Dustin for popping in and giving his 2 cents. I got a question for you though. Let's bring it back into the sports car realm for a minute. I left it in the title because I did want to touch on it a little bit tonight. And this will be for the chat as well as us. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on. I know Jeremy's doing his doubleheader on his channel. Doing an interview that's been done several times. Just saying. But anyway, I can literally send you links. But the point is that, no, like I did it just for fun.
Literally, yes.
No, like I went just for fun. I was curious. I went to Google and I went Gene, Arena Designs, and I pressed enter. And the first 3 out of 4 were live streams she's already done. Like recently. And I was like, yeah, I thought so. It wasn't my imagination. Cardboard Chronicles has done one. Essential Credentials has done one, and there's a third one on there, and you can find it. First three. Just saying, she has talked before. It isn't that new, but anyway, we're 2/3 of the way through this year. Collecting wise, I'm curious.
Wow.
Did you set any goals at the beginning of the year? I usually do as a habit. I like to try to set a goal at the beginning of the year, and I've done it the last several years to try to give me something to shoot for. Whether you have or not, I'm curious if 2/3 of the way through the year, are you kind of on track with where you thought you'd be? Have you pivoted a couple of times? Where do you feel like you're at 2/3 of the way through?
Yeah, I've kind of shifted completely over to sports memorabilia type cards. So it's patch autos or just autos. I've been really going kind of heavy into that. So this is like a Larry Bird National Treasures.
Yeah, you got your mileage on that one. I saw it on your live stream yesterday too.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, Will, your timing is good. We had a good video game talk. We did link it to cards a little bit. We're gonna go back to cards now. So your timing is good.
But just a lot of this is my first Willie Mays auto.
I like that one. I like that. The Willie Mays one's cool.
And it's just been like a huge focus on scarcity. And look, I understand that a lot of these guys have signed a lot of things, but I'm looking at specific sets, whether it be Upper Deck SP or National Treasures or maybe some of the, like, this is kind of this Fleer showcase. This was an interesting one. I looked it up on Cardboard Connection, and they have kind of a roundabout idea of how many there were printed.
I think you said about 60? 60,
about
give or take?
60 of them, and then none of them are higher than this PSA 7. So I saw it pop up on eBay. I was like, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So it was kind of a cool find, but I've been looking at that like niche, stuff like that. Just focused on, a lot of folks are trying to figure out kind of like, what are the inserts that are going to be popular in 15, 20 years? Is it going to be these kabooms and whatever? Yeah. I don't really want to play that game. I'd rather go with this stuff where I just think it's awesome. I literally have like a dozen of them around my desk to where it's like coolness, to like look at, to display. So that's really where I've ended up, and it's not necessarily RPAs like rookies. It's just a focus on, more scarce type stuff. I also found, this is kind of cool, if I can share this real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
There was an antique dealer at the National, and I bought, this is a basketball from 1920,
Wow.
and I bought so this guy.
Did you get it with did you get it with the attached basket?
Yeah,
you gotta have it with the basket.
So the guy had all the old gloves and bats too.
Yeah,
I
like
saw
the peach basket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, this guy had, and I was like, man, I love some of your stuff, but I can't carry it on the plane. Can you ship it? And he's like, no, I don't ship anything. I'm just like, damn it. And he's like, where are you located? And it turns out he was about 45-minute drive from me in North Carolina. Okay. Nice. So I went to his house. He's like, you're the first client I've ever had at my house, to come and look at. He had like the showcase in his garage. He had like a massive setup in his garage.
Very cool.
Wow.
But yeah, so anyway, just been focused on, I guess, more some of that antique stuff, but vintage video games. Let me grab my scotch. And then and then just the auto patch type stuff of just, and I've been looking at, I know I've been preaching this on the channel too, but Beckett.com has got kind of a search bar where you can look at how much guys have signed as far as
bless you. I was hoping you'd bring this up because I've listened to it enough times. So it's like, okay, let's just set the record straight.
Are you going to correct me?
I'm totally going to correct you. It's time to get you some help. It's time to get you. Listen, the cake eating guy is not going to help. He's not going to fix anything for us. So real quick, the Beckett listing is actually really good. It is a good call out because it is an excellent resource. What they did is they basically put the price guide data and their database based on it. That is what the online version is. So when you're seeing that listing, you're seeing what's in the Beckett database, where if you buy the price guide for it, you would get the prices for it. So it's their online version of the price guide. Obviously, they can give you a full checklist because it's online. It's easier to do. It is a little clunky because the way they put their sets and everything is based on old infrastructure they came up with in the 90s, and it's proprietary, so they're doomed to stick to it. I don't like the way they do it. It's terrible. But it is a decent database. It's actually got a lot of stuff in it. So when you see the numbers over to the side, be it autographs, be it jerseys, be it game used memorabilia, to their best estimation, those are individual SKUs of cards that fall under those categories. So under whatever category it is.
And I understand it's probably not a perfect science,
but it's decent. It's pretty good.
It gives you. The reason why I like to look at it is like comparing how much, how many on-card Jim Brown autographs are there compared to like LeBron James or something. And I know it's not a perfect science, but it is kind of fun to kind of delve into, different players. And, I picked up a Marshall Falk, like randomly, like this is not, I've been looking at like Thurman Thomas and, and there's already graded cards that for a lot of these Hall of Fame players that are less than the cost of grading is right now.
Yes.
Which I know that's not a barometer, like grading could go down.
But here's the thing though, you're getting basically the holder for free. Like if you're really thinking about it, you're getting the grading, even if you absolutely detest the notion, if you're not paying a premium, you're getting a nice holder with a label for free. That's not a bad thing. That's why I said as collectors, if somebody says to me like their intention is resell, PSA is still king of the roost. However, if you're a collector, buy your SGC card, buy your BGS card. I have no issue with that. By all means, please do. There's nothing wrong with that. I buy BGS cards, but I don't pay a premium. Sometimes I pay a discount. Sometimes I pay a very steep discount. But that's a win for me as a collector because then I'm getting the card I want. No issues, no concerns, and I'm getting it at a fair price. Sounds like a win to me. That's great.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I have been, I think just kind of my hobby journey, I've been pivoting. I've been pivoting a lot, just trying to, and a lot of it too is like, I get into a variety of different things. And then there'll be something like, oh, I really like this. And then but then I'm like, okay, well, actually I like this a little bit better. And so I'm always kind of pivoting, but I think that I've landed on something that I can stick with, that I'm going to stick with this stuff. It's just awesome. And like you said, it's like, I can't collect everything. I'd love to get into, I'd love to have some graded currency, but it's like, I'm not a zillionaire,
Right.
so, it's going to be graded video games. I'll get the ones that I want. And then, I've got my cards and there's also comic book stuff that I target too, like early Hulk books and early X-Men stuff. And, so I've got a variety of interests, which is good and bad when it comes to my wallet.
No, I think that's fair. So quickly, I'll get caught up in a couple of comments here. So I already answered Will's question. We're definitely on the sports card side. Justin lives. Carlos and Bobby, exclamation point. Good evening, Justin. All right, real quick here. I made my parents spend $1,000 on Kool-Aid to get enough points to get the Kool-Aid Man game. Legit.
I remember the points.
Yeah, that's right. 2 weeks later, it was less exciting than Saints 2021 offense.
Ah,
Oh man, shots
Like
fired.
I think it was a beautiful setup to get the New Orleans Saints shot.
He got me too, because I was like, Kool-Aid points, and then I got
yeah. Well, listen, if it's any consolation, I have been relatively nice to you on this, Dustin. But one of my best friends is a New Orleans Saints fan, and I torment him. Like it's been beautiful to the point that I have completely delegitimized the Super Bowl. It's like, I'm sorry that didn't happen. Someday y'all's team is going to win a Super Bowl. Good on you. That's why I like the saying.
And we've got the Packers week 1.
There you go. Exactly.
You're a Packers
Listen,
fan.
I'm worried. You got Jameis. Now I'm worried. Like now I'm scared.
Here's the thing with him. He's deadly, but he can also throw 5 picks.
Like if Sean Payton thinks he's a great coach, like here's the jokes aside. If Sean Payton thinks he's a great coach and I grabbed some Jameis Winston really cheap on ComC, just on the off chance, I just put it to the side, whatever, because that's a proper platform if you want to flip something. It's much easier on that platform. Kere's the thing. He's got talent. If Sean Payton is the coach that he believes he is, like, no, harness this guy. He can throw the ball. Just keep by the way, other than that last season where he threw 30 interceptions, yeah, he throws interceptions, but he hasn't been that egregious for most of his career outside of that 1 year. But he also threw for 5,200 yards and 30 touchdowns. So it's like, if you could harness this a little bit, you might be very happy with the results.
And does he need to be the guy that throws 5 touchdowns the way that Breeze is when we've got other weapons? Like we have other ways that we have a good defense. We've got, Alvin Kamara handles the ball a lot. He doesn't need to be that guy that's throwing for 5,000 yards.
But the thing is though, he could. There's enough enough talent there where it's like, it's about harnessing. It's like if Jameis has every incentive to play well, him playing well would validate, hey, I could have been. Because if Jameis, I still believe, I like to make fun of the Tom Brady guys to no end, but I still believe that team was a playoff team if Jameis was above average because he has the arm talent. That they had so much talent. Their defense was great. It's like, if Jameis doesn't throw 30 interceptions, they were a playoff team that year.
Yeah.
But it's getting the turnovers under control. But if you can figure that out, the pieces are there and you've got enough talent around him, maybe This could be good.
It makes me nervous that he had a great preseason game and now everybody's like, Jameis is back. And that makes me really, really nervous.
No, that part should make you nervous, yes. But that's why I always like to make fun of him. It's like, listen, someday y'all will win a real Super Bowl. It's like, no, it's like, listen, I watched that NFC Championship game. The fix was in, bros. The fix was in. I have questions.
I was really torn on that one because I was a huge Brett Favre fan growing up, huge, because the Saints never made the playoffs. They were never really any good. So I was always pulling for the Packers to beat the Cowboys in the playoffs, and they did. They kind of got over that hump. And so I was a huge Brett Favre fan. So I was really torn, especially the way that we got after Favre in that game too. It was rough, but yeah. Oh, I think you're on mute.
You're on mute. Click. No, you're out.
Uh-oh.
All right, going forward.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, the problem is there's a button there that I forgot about. Actually, at the bottom of this, there is a mute button there. There's a manual one. I forgot about it. It's a weird design to put it there, but anyway, I understand. No, all I was going to say is it is a lot of fun to make fun of. And that's part of the fun of football anyway. So now as we're winding into the season, that's part of the enjoyment of it. So we may as well have some fun with it.
Absolutely.
So Justin likes sorry, I meant to read this one as well. So Gina's back at the top of the rotation. She did the hobby content creator rounds a few years ago. Yes. Yeah, she also did a little bit last year as well, because as people started getting interested in some of those 90s basketball designs, arena design was at the forefront of that. I'm not making fun of Gene making the rounds. By all means, please do. But a lot of the questions have been asked. We'll see if there's any new ground covered. Like, I'll be curious to see if there's any new ground covered. But like some of those conversations were upwards of 2 hours long and a lot of great questions were asked. So it's like, if you want to know about the past, we talked about it a lot. If you want to know about the present, well, we just got started on that. I'm always in the spot where I am sort of interested, but I'm like, I just want to see the design on the cars. I actually kind of don't care who made it. With due respect, it's like, no, congratulations to you guys. You came up with some great designs, but I really don't care who you are. It's nothing personal. That's just for me. I like the idea of on-card autos idea right now. Absolutely. I'll quickly skip through here. Collect what makes you happy is my motto. I know these guys are talking to each other a little bit.
I was going to say too about the on-card stuff. So I was kind of like, man, I really want to focus on game-worn jerseys and that stuff. But now with the whole Fanatics deal, and I won't open up Pandora's box with Fanatics. We could probably talk about that for 2 hours. But I'm thinking like if anybody's going to do mem cards right, it should be them. I mean, they should have amazing game worn, bottle of saliva attached to the card or whatever,
Soon.
sweat cards or whatever the heck, So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
I'm just grabbing the question here for Aussie Card.
Then they can PSA DNA it as well.
They could, yeah. So they're asking is the number they give on the BGS side for cards they have graded. It's total number. So what happens is when you look up any player, you've got this spot here. That's the total number of cards they have in the database, not how many cards they have graded. How many are qualifying under memorabilia? Again, they're not perfect, but they're pretty good at it. How many are considered rookie cards by Beckett? How many of them are autographs? And then serial numbers. And then to Dustin's point, there is also an on-card autograph category as well that is distinct from just autographs in general. It's a good ballpark figure. It's a good starting point. It's always a good starting point. Don't take it as gospel, but at least they've built up a pretty robust database for most players. It's a decent start to begin. It's all right.
Yeah, and you can kind of figure are certain guys still signing? Are they deceased, or are they still signing stuff? And that's kind of a fun game to play.
Yeah, and it also is sometimes for some of the players, if you want to know what their earliest graded stuff was, it's a nice thing to check out. So it's like it's good to be like, oh, by the way, if you're curious what their first graded stuff was, click on the checkbox. You can look right at the top, and you'll be like, oh, okay, that's the first year they did that. Especially for some veteran players. Like Gordie Howe didn't start signing on-card stuff until the early 90s, which is when that really came into vogue. But you can check out which sets fell into that category. Again, not perfect, but a really good starting point if you're curious for certain players.
Yep.
That would be the way I present that. Good evening, Mr. Bob Lewis. Absolutely. Sticking with the Pirates. Absolutely. But yeah, that's the reason why I kind of wanted to pose that question to you is that, yeah, I just looked at it and go, yeah, next week we're in September. we're in that last third of the year, and it's like okay, let's start settling in and seeing, because I'm starting to look at some. I've met some of my goals for the year already.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how about you for that?
Yeah, for the player collection, it's been good. I've been well ahead of schedule in a bunch of them, so I've been good. But it's going to be a good opportunity now to go back in and take a look and pull up that video and go like, okay, let's see where we're at. Some of the vintage sets I need to make some progress on. So now I can focus on that for the last third of the year. Part of the reason it's a good question as well is that if everything happens, I've started getting the emails. We're going to have our fall expo here. Supposedly, if everything goes according to plan, they're green light right now. We're going to have that in November. And that's our big show. And that's still theoretically the second biggest show in North America after the National. So that's
wow.
our big show. The one that we have twice a year traditionally, and we haven't had it in almost 2 years. So it'll be 2 years when we hit that one. And they've expanded to 4 days. My intention is to go. I'll be fully vaccinated by the time I'm over there. So we're getting close. So that's the plan. But again, I'm going to play by ear. I got to see where we're at that point as we approach and get closer. If it follows everything else, it's going to be a lot busier. So I started getting a couple of questions. Hey, are you going to the expo? Hey, what do you think about hotels nearby and everything? I'm like, all right, that means we're at the time where I have to start kind of figuring it. I may actually make a video for some folks that are not familiar, that may be thinking about coming down for the first time. But what's going to be funny, I did the math a couple of episodes ago. They do them twice a year. I've been to 46 expos.
Oh, wow.
Going back to the mid-90s. So I've been to a lot of them. So it's not my first rodeo. But if it follows the path of what this is, now, if you take it twice a year, that's the equivalent of 23 nationals.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of folks that have been to a lot of those. So they understand what I'm talking about. But it's like twice a year, the fall and the spring, and I've been to most of those since 95. So I've been doing this for a while. But this is going to be different if it follows. Now, here's what I'm curious about. This is part of what I'm going to include in the video. I'm not really giving spoilers because I got to think through what I want to say. But I don't know what the trade night situation is going to be like because the hotels really aren't built for that. It's in a convention center that's kind of off in its own area across from the airport. So it's conveniently located from the perspective of if you're flying in, airport's right there, hotels all over the place surrounding on both sides, really. Tons of hotels. But it's not like a hop, skip, and a jump. It's not like you're just going to stroll casually over for most of those hotels. It's a short drive, like 5 minutes for most of them. A lot of people are going to be congregated in that area. You want to try to stick a trade night in? Where?
Yeah. That was something that was wild about the National this past one. And granted, I hadn't been to this show before, so I didn't really understand the layout of it. But it was the trade nights were a whole separate show from the actual show. You know what I mean? And one thing that was kind of nice is it gave you a different, if you weren't having success, I guess, kind of working with dealers, then at least you could kind of work with other attendees that had brought stuff or whatever. That was kind of cool. And actually you had some dealers that were in the trade nights too, like bringing stuff to the trade night. It was really kind of funny how that was all working out. But
well, some of the feedback I heard from, I think, Neo and some folks is that some folks actually found it easier to deal at the trade night.
Definitely.
Because while it was busy, it was kind of folks impromptu setting themselves up. It was some collectors who didn't have booths, but then set up at the trade night. And if they were willing to deal and you guys just talk back and forth, you come to agreeable deals. Like, yeah, here's some cash. Boom, take the card. I'll do a trade or whatever. They were willing to work with you. And because you're not paying for a booth, you're literally setting up in a hotel corridor. It might be a little easier. You're not really needing to cover expenses.
I just can't imagine being someone walking in to check in at the hotel and like, what the heck is going on here? Because unless you're in that space, I mean, you've got to be thinking like something weird is going on, like because it was an abnormal amount of people. Like it just didn't make sense, and actually kind of they pushed people out of the lobby and they ended up going kind of back into these banquet rooms and things and completely took up all of that space. It was interesting. I've never seen anything quite like that.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking of the configuration of the hotels because I've stayed at a couple of them for the expos and stuff, and I'm just thinking like, we don't have that many eating establishments. Like we've got some for sure, and they get pretty busy during the expo, but also it's near an airport, so you got people that are like having layovers and stuff. Is like conducting normal. Now, mind you, it's going to be a little less busy. I would think that way right now. There's still going to be some COVID stuff. So I don't think the airports are going to be packed to the gills. No. But if you get enough people to drive in, it won't be the airport traffic. It'll be the general traffic because people can drive in. It's still available. And then there's the folks in the GTA. And if they're that hell-bent on going to a card show, there's your big card show. That's going to be a draw for a lot of folks. If they're already getting pumped up 2.5 months in advance, it's like, oh boy. I don't know about that one.
We'll see.
Yeah. But I've already been asked for like hotel recommendations. I'm like, ooh, Okay.
That's
That's
tough.
going to be that. It is because it depends on what you want, right? Like, are you trying to get the cheapest hotel nearby? That's one answer.
Basically, that's all you
Yeah,
need,
and
right?
a lot of them are in the same vicinity. So it's like, you want to pay 20 extra bucks to be a night to be 50 feet closer? Like, does it matter to you that much?
Something like a guy's weekend. We're used to sleeping in cottages with rusty old beds. So, what are you so worried about?
Yeah, I think there'll be people piled to a room. That'll be it. I like this
Yeah,
comment though.
I'm sure it's
Trade night
gonna
at the
happen.
airport, Sasha T style. I'll give you $1. I'll put you on the thumbnail. That'll work. Here we go. So here you go. Can Fanatics see spoke about how to sign their name? Check out the Patrick Williams Chicago Bulls and Andres Jimenez. Okay. I'll see if I can check it out. I'll see if I can take a look at it. But yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens. Anything else though outside of that that you're looking forward to for the last little chunk of the year here, Dustin? Because it's going to be interesting. I'm hoping we don't get too much craziness every week. I'd like a little breather in here, but it's still interesting. A lot of goings on.
Yeah, I mean, as far as hobby news stuff, I think I've had my fill as far as kind of the things that I wanted to happen or needed to happen. I contemplated going to the summit, the hobby summit. I can't.
Oh yes,
in Vegas that's coming up. I think though what I'm actually going to
Bobby,
do.
we got two things in Vegas, man. In 2 weeks, we've got the actual hobby summit. That's the one in September. But then they've got the Mint Collective in January in Vegas. Bobby, they're trying now. All of a sudden, Vegas is the mecca of collecting.
That's what I'm going to go to. I think.
So the Mint Collective one. Okay.
In part, just from a timing standpoint, it's just too much for me to swing. But if I go to that one at the end of January, I can kind of plan ahead a little bit and do that one.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd like to.
Cheap for you?
What's that?
Are the flights cheap for you to go to Vegas opposed to somewhere else?
I'm
it's cheaper in Canada to come to Vegas.
Yeah, it's not really convenient. It's almost like going to Europe, going to the West Coast. If you're, it's probably similar, I guess, if you're on the east side of Canada, going to the west side of Canada, it feels like you're, it's like a long flight. I mean, to get to Vegas, it's not easy it's going to be a whole day of travel, to get out there. It's going to the West Coast is not great, but
that's what makes it interesting because that's a real thing is that because I was chatting with I got a guy in our message board thread there that is going to Vegas and he does have to do a stopover. Whereas for us, it's like we can get direct flight. Right
down.
Straight down. The only time I had a stopover was on the way back. And ironically enough, the stopover was in Chicago. So the last time I was in Chicago was in a stopover coming back from Vegas. So there you go. There's your two connection to recent one. So there's the Patrick Williams for trigger finger. So it is a pretty bad auto. I'm not really feeling that one. Not that great. That is quite the squiggle.
Sad. Why would you? That's
it's a lack of effort. It's a lack of effort.
It really is. It's just sloppy, quick.
Well, I wonder too. Do you think it'll be different now if the players' associations have kind of a piece of the pie that they didn't have before?
Yeah.
You would think, but who knows?
Right now, where Fanatics stands today is they got the MLB, both ends covered, NBA, both ends covered, and then NFL Players Association, but not the NFL League yet.
Okay.
That would be like the last. Now, mind you, what I thought was interesting is I think it's the NBA one. From what I understood, from what I last captured there, is that the NBA one, they grabbed a 20-year exclusive. So it's not like a year or 5 years, and that's 20 years.
Yeah.
It's like you're not getting back in on this, just so you guys know.
And hockey's not even talking about it.
I thought I saw that for the NFL as well.
It could be the similar offer. It could be a similar. Well, with equity, you probably would be more interested in really arranging a longer term deal because you're getting equity. You want to get your money out of it, right?
It's just tremendous. You think about if it is true that it's 10 times kind of like what Topps and Panini are paying. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not. I've heard speculation on that, but. Yeah. And then a 20-year deal, it's like a Bobby Bonilla deal or whatever, it's incredible.
Well, that's,
they've got such a massive conglomerate. I have to assume that they've just this is just another, it's an infinity stone, for Fanatics. I just have to assume it's just going to, open things up for them.
So what we need then is to continue down the path. We need to get Fanatics to then buy Collector's Universe. So it's like the full, we got to get everything. Then they can have, Panini. Then they can have Topps. Then they can have WATA. They can have everything.
YouTube channels. I was joking on
Oh.
my channel, like not a Fanatics sponsored video yet.
Well, the thing is, I did have some fun on I think it was last week's. It's like, look, bless you guys. I am on the shilling sellout bandwagon. I was ahead of y'all. I've already made clear.
I was gonna wear like Fanatic, like buy a Fanatics cap or something. You know, like
Fanatics doing a deal with the hockey, aren't they? Like a 6 month, and then we'll renegotiate.
Well, I already said the NHL actually tried to sell to Fanatics, and Fanatics was like budgetary constraints. It's like, look, $100, just take us. No,
please.
No, I'm good. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Keep Upper Deck. It's great. You guys are great. You're doing great. It's like, but don't you want? No, it's good. It's cool. It's fine. Y'all keep it.
Don't call us. We'll call you.
Exactly.
But you guys are probably. I assume you're happy with Upper Deck as far as quality goes. I mean, Upper Deck is a quality company.
Upper Deck is fine. I consider Upper Deck to be fine. I think they're fine. Yeah. They're hardly perfect. Hockey is still a smaller market, no matter how you want to slice it. I would love to see, as much as I give Leaf flack, and they deserve it, I would love. In hockey, I think you could split that pie. I think it would be more interesting if we had Leaf in there. I would love to get a little bit of, let them have a real stab at it with licensed stuff and be like, because it's still the smallest piece of that pie. Like hockey is certainly bigger, but it's I'm not going to argue that it's bigger internationally than Bundesliga and, and Premier. It's like, look, hockey is in certain countries that really love it, and Canada and parts of the northern United States. It's pockets. There's some pockets that are very hot for it, and they're passionate. What they lack in size, they make up for in passion. There's no lack of that. But it's not the license you're going to go killing yourself over. You're not going to make the Godfather deal for hockey.
Right.
You'll make a deal, but it's like, if you were going to buy Upper Deck, the value in Upper Deck is if you could get Jordan and LeBron to agree to sign for you. That's the value in the Upper Deck license, if you're going to bother with it. That's the real one.
Yeah, and with hockey, we weren't really affected by the market upswing too much, Dustin. It was very, very mild compared to basketball, baseball, and football. So it was kind of nice being protected in that small area, and it still makes it affordable to collect, and it's kind of nice being almost niche, really.
Yeah,
to a degree.
I think that's fair. So that's why I mean, like from that perspective, if they were to make an offer on it, I'm sure that'd be interesting. I just don't know, like, if you're Fanatics and you got a checklist of things to do, crush tops into oblivion and buy them for pennies on the dollar, make fun of Panini and crush them too. Eventually you'll get the Upper Deck, but like eventually, troll the rest of the hobby. There'll be a lot of that because Josh Luber's already having his fun. He was on the crossover, and it's like literally on the cusp of this news, and they couldn't coax one detail out of him. He wanted to talk about like, well, wouldn't it be cool if you had like autos that were just like standalone stickers, and then you could put them on whatever, and you see Christina and Chris and everybody and Josh staring at him and going like, we're not going to get anything out of you, are we? It's like, nope, he's not going to say a damn thing. He's just going to sit here and troll you.
Man, that's tremendous pressure. I mean, probably great to get that job, but I mean, everyone's going to be. I mean, it'll be one of those things. You'll never make everybody happy, but just so much pressure to deliver. I mean, a whole new brand, assuming that they don't use Topps Panini IP or whatever, if they're going to go out on their own, that's a serious undertaking.
Agreed. So Eric here says going to the Rich Allman show tomorrow at Shriners. Are you familiar with that one? That ring a bell to you?
Yeah, it's been going on for 30 years.
And Shriners in Boston?
Yes.
Yeah, it's over in Massachusetts. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Eric, say hi to Gabe for me.
Nice. Just getting caught up in the chat here. So here it says it's only been your 46th rodeo though. Need someone with more experience. That's true. There's like 5 people. There's not a lot of folks. There's not a lot of folks, to be honest, that have been there since the very first expo that have not missed one. Like it's very hard to find that list. So yeah, you can find some folks, but it's let's put it there. If I went in the room with those folks that are like in the 45, close to 50, it's going to be a small group. It's not going to be a lot of us. There are folks there, but not as many as you'd think. Just because it's twice a year, so the odds of missing one is pretty high.
Oh, very much.
So where do you find these bad autos? Yeah, absolutely. So quickly here. Let's just scroll through. I'm just getting caught up. Here we go. If I see him, I'll tell him. Perfect. Nice. So I'm not going to keep you. If you want to take off, you're more than welcome. I do appreciate you coming on and chiming in on some of the stuff because it was interesting. Obviously, we got a lot of mileage out of that topic.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, if there's any crazy retro vintage game talk, let's talk about it. I think it's fun. I'm new to it too. I'm new to the space, and frankly, the space itself is new, so it's kind of fun. I can be like a pioneer, down the road, it'll be like, oh, you're doing this. Like, well, I guess so. I mean, like it just kind of jumped on the bandwagon.
I do find it refreshingly interesting anyways.
It's fun. And I mean, I'm into all sorts of different collectibles. And also, even if I'm not into that particular thing, it's interesting to hear why people collect certain things. So, there's always some sort of nostalgia or something tied to it, or there's a story. And I really enjoy that. So, but yeah, thanks guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And do you want to take at the end here, personal finance dad, retro game dad? You got a 4th or 5th or 6th channel as you do 46 videos a day.
Yeah, I should have some. I feel like I should have some more stuff cooking. No, I'm behind on all of my stuff as it is, but we'll see. Yeah, I guess never say never, right? Never say never.
Nice. Well, appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
All right,
we'll chat with you a little later. Thanks.
Talk to you later.
Take care.
Good stuff.
Wow, that was great.
Yeah. We did definitely get some good mileage out of that topic. It
was great having him on. He helped fill in a lot of blanks, and that was really good. That was wonderful having him on. Actually, it was refreshing.
Yeah. So quickly, I'm just checking here. I'm getting caught up. Aussie Card Dad says highly doubtful Fanatics would bother with Operatic. Yeah, the Jordan thing is part of the reason why I'd say I'm just being practical. At this point, you got to put your business hat on. If you're putting your business hat on, you're looking for value. Topps makes some sense. That makes sense. Panini makes some sense because they've still got some other IPs and stuff like that. There's some stuff that's already established in the market. That makes sense. Upper Deck, sure, it could make sense. But if Jordan doesn't want to sign for you and LeBron doesn't care and he doesn't feel like it,
what do you do?
That's a lot of the value. Like that's a lot of potential value. You're like, okay, so basically what you're offering us is some of your other miscellaneous licenses and hockey. Okay. I think I got some change. Hold on, let me check. Could you check in the couch and see if we have some change? That's my offer.
It was nice to hear that Dustin say about he's trying to look for the rarity, and I think that's a real key that people have to find. That rarity does rule, and finding those harder things, you don't have to collect as much because you're finding rarity. It's actually so you're spending less on maybe more on some things, but less often. So I think it's a really good thing. I've always said that, in what I do, I'm always looking for rarity. I don't know what's going to even come up.
The only point that I wanted to hammer home with that though, and it's totally valid, but what I wanted to hammer home is that because that space is so lightly researched at the stage, it's hard to tell what rarity is. Even if you have it in front of you, you might not know. It actually might be the rare variant right in front of your hand, right in your hands at that moment. And it's like, but I don't know. How many of these are there out there? What's the variant? What's the slight modification? What's the twist on this?
That's where hockey, deals right in my hand because I know if I haven't seen it before, it's like, well, okay,
Yeah. And in this space, there's a lot of folks that are sitting on a lot of stuff because there's some hardcore collectors. And this is where in that space, the vlogs of these different folks, a lot of stuff came out of the West Coast because that's where some of the game companies were. So some of the employees have some of those prototypes and some of those legitimate scarcities. And there was an era where you would be able to find this stuff in garage sales because the employer would be like, well, I don't know. I didn't think of this as being valuable. They put it in their garage sale and somebody would walk by and go like, what the hell is this? $5, take it.
It's sort of much like the Quaker Oats thing. Remember when Nathan was talking, how many people in Peterborough had won the contest?
Yes.
In that surrounding area. So, in those areas, guys who work there, they took some home. So there's a lot of those little regional pockets and it could be a sample, it could be an earlier, who knows,
That's fair. Okay, so I know Trigger really wants me to check out this Andres Jimenez. Okay, question for you. Is he from Cleveland? Because I've got an Andres Jimenez from Cleveland. I've got an immaculate auto here. If that's the one, I can bring it up. But you just clarify for me what team it's for. Oh, sorry, you're saying 28 Bowman auto specifically. Okay, so maybe you got better later because this one, it's not great, but it doesn't look that bad. Let me see here. 2018 Bowman and Andres Jimenez. So you're saying specifically that one. Bowman Chrome, I guess? Okay. Okay, yeah. That one's basically a squiggle. Okay, hold on. I think I've seen this one before, actually. This one rings a bell. Let me see.
I wonder if...
There you go, Bobby. Great signature.
Yeah, would Fanatics push that envelope? That's a good question.
With which thing are we talking about?
You know, they're saying, hey, your autograph is kind of, this is for all of us now. Are we going to push this envelope to say, hey, could you put a little bit more into your autograph? I don't know.
Perfect. I just wanted to clarify. That is right. Yeah, Bob. That's right. We did look at that one. That's right. Yeah, Bob brought that one up previously. Yeah. No, it's definitely a bad auto. I'd be hard pressed to find a worse one. So I would be inclined to agree. I'm with you guys on this. So let me pose a question for you guys. And hey, Bob, I'm not going to drag it on too long, but if you want to pop on for a bit, this might be kind of a fun topic for you. Just give me the word and I can send you the link quickly. What I propose, because we've talked about the game topic and we did bring it into sports cards because there is some connections. Now the Collector's Universe is part of this. Golden is involved in it. There's some links there. And I think it's kind of fun, a little bit interesting. And by the way, no pressure, Bob. Just let me know.
I think it connects to all hobbies.
It can for sure. But I love I love that it really is in now. Collector's Universe having it in that sphere. Nat Turner commenting on it, and Dennis and everybody. It's like, guys, you brought it right in.
It's a small world, really, and it gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah, you brought it right in. So it's like at that point, guess what? Now it's part of the conversation. So here we are. So what I think is interesting, though, and this is a question I posed to the chat as well, what I referred to earlier. We are 2/3 of the way through the year. So my question to you guys is, how you making out? Are you taking it easy for the summer? Did you get frustrated with the price hikes and just kind of backed away from it? Are you still in it all the time? Where do you find yourself at this point? Because we got about 1/3 of the year left. Are you looking at picking some stuff up? Are you kind of taking it easy, doing a little bit of wait and see? It's just a kind of question. I leave it open. Yep, no worries. So here we go. I knew I saw it somewhere. Come on, Fanatics. Yeah, if the players are getting paid for it, maybe a few more letters. Yeah.
There's so much we don't know what's going to happen with Fanatics in 3 to 5
for sure.
years. It's you can guess to blue in the face, and there is the most likely scenarios. I mean, even Brian Gray went over. You know, this should happen. This probably might happen. Mm-hmm. I think they don't know what's going to happen because I think there's some other things that's going to come around that may affect everything too. So that's other things with the economy and what have you. So there's a lot of other things going on.
Well, all the time at this point is that every day that goes by, I don't expect news every day. That would be ridiculous. But what I do expect is that some of these deals are going to start getting put together. Because, by the way, these deals don't happen in a vacuum. It's not like Fanatics picked up the phone, said, hey, here's more money than God. Oh, sure, sounds good, deal. No, it takes time. It takes time to talk through the particulars. By the time the word gets out there, they've been talking for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, you have to lay the groundwork. And actually, that reminded me of something, not directly related to that, but it was part of our topic earlier. But this is kind of a fun one. And I think you'll appreciate this one, Bobby. From our old PWCC eBay drama. There is another shoe to drop. And it was a little bit more under the radar, but it is significant. It is a notable thing. And I'll show you guys an Instagram story, and then I'll show it to you. So this one is going to be from Wax Museum Podcast. So this is on a Instagram story. I'll read it to you, and then I'll give you that information. So, says, losing photo bucket access, talking about some things that we've lost over time. Hobby Kings, then Worth Point, then PWCC pricing data. Because
I mentioned that last time.
Well, it hadn't happened yet, but now officially PWCC has dropped its eBay piece from it.
Yes.
Okay. Now when you go look at it, you can see old PWCC auction listings only, and the eBay ones, poof, they're gone. Can't find them anymore. So now when you go under sales history, you get basically this. I'll pull it up here. I had it open in a tab, so figured I'd put it on here. Here you go, PWCC sales history. I just put on Medano, and these are all PWCC sales. Just that. You got the pictures, which is nice. You got the totals, but if you want to look beyond a certain point, like eBay stuff. By the way, I just put Medano. I didn't put anything else. There's
Well,
millions of inserts and stuff that would normally fall under, but these are all PWCC only. So all you're going to get is rookie cards and certain specific inserts. It's very limited.
doesn't this help Chris and Christina with their business? Because you can't just look them up on PWCC anymore.
Well, it depends on where they're pulling the old data from. Because if they want to make a new profile for something that's
Yeah.
an older card, where do you pull the old data? Because eBay is only keeping the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Because PWCC had that old database, so you would have been able to scrub some of that for some information. Not so much anymore. Going forward, that won't be available. You won't be able to backtrack. Going forward, you can pull new data, but backtracking, you won't be able to.
Yeah, I don't think there's much backtracking on the rare cards that you've talked about that having, and certain ones, yes, I understand, but in general for the tracking, whatever's current is current. Nothing really lasts for longer than 3 months for the most part, pricing wise.
No, for sure. But I'm saying on those rare cards, it was nice being able to go back to 2004 data and being able to get a perspective in how was it at that time. Because then you can at least get a ballpark figure. You can be like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. I get you.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, well, now you're basically starting from scratch. So what happened before? No earthly idea. No clue.
And WorthPoint is worthless.
Yep.
In that sense of, I every time I go back to them, it's just, I don't even want to go there anymore. It's that worthless. And I don't understand their business model going forward. Why don't you just make your access rather than having only so many and doing this monthly thing? Why don't you just, leave it open and free? But they're so limited on what they're giving you. They're giving you only a certain percentage. Like not even, I did some searches of stuff I've sold for the last 20 years and I didn't find nothing, not even in the search. And I'm going,
Yep.
How good are you? You are no good. You're worthless to me at this point. And then every time you're searching and researching, then you got to come up and they give you that window where you got to, hey, boats. How many of these things have boats? Click, 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 and then you can see the next page.
Oh, the Kepchka or whatever.
Oh yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like, are you kidding? And because I'm just doing research. I'm just trying to type in, trying to find it. Looking at different pages, and every time you go past 2 pages or 3 pages, that thing keeps coming up, and it's like.
I feel Bobby that it's going to be a struggle to get that sponsorship deal.
Yeah.
I feel like it's gonna be a struggle. Sounds good. Okay, so quickly I'm getting caught up here. Still buying mostly baseball and football, a little basketball. Some is cheap in my opinion, but sprinkle in a little more niche PC stuff. No, that's good. I'm I'm hopeful that some folks are able to find these windows and pockets of things that interest them. That's why I posed the question.
Well,
What
you're
are you
a
guys
specific
planning?
Medano collector, right?
Yeah, but what are you guys posing for that last third of the year? I'd be curious.
Oh, this year.
I set up some goals. I set up some goals early on, and I'm well on track for most of them. So for me, it's just going back to the list, double checking where I'm at, checking off the ones that are already done, and then putting a little focus on the ones that I'm pretty close, because there's somewhere I'm pretty close.
Well, my question to you is, how much is that? Somewhat, let's say, speculative investment or personal collection?
Oh, the goals are always a personal collection. I don't make goals for speculative.
Well, if you buy some newer cards, this guy's going to do good. No, you don't do that.
I don't include those in my goals. They're not. Those ones are played by ear. Yeah, as I see opportunities, I adjust to what's happening. That's different.
Sure, I got you.
Yeah, no, goals are always PC stuff. Medano and vintage collections that I'm doing the sets. That's where the goals piece, because it's easier for me to project. Anything speculative, we can go 180 degrees in one day because something happened. You got to look into it. So it's one of those ones you got to check. But I'm always got my eye open if an opportunity presents itself. But that's going to be more dynamic. That's not going to be a goal you're going to stick at the beginning of the year. It's too hard to predict.
Yeah, it's hard for me because I don't have any goals. It's my goals only come before me when I see them. Because we're talking mostly rarity. I'd like to see this in the original package. I'm looking for one of those. I'm looking for 40 of one of those of different things. And when are they going to show up? I don't know. Yeah. It's not like you can buy this stuff. And I think that's the thrill is, you're waking up to a treasure hunt every day. I know I've repeated that many times. And it's so true. Because what am I going to find today? I don't know.
I think that's fair. I think it's valid. So, so I wanted to put this one. I didn't get a chance to reply back. Eric sent me an IG message on a card. Thank you for that. I do have that card, and I actually did take advantage of 4 Sharp Corners because they had the, it was the Emerald variant or the It was not Sapphire. Sapphire is the blue one. Emerald variant out of 10, and I actually bought that one from 4 Sharp Corners because he sent me one of the ones where they had the multiple parallels. They're all graded because Four Sharp Corners always does graded. If you get it on the website, it is cheaper. And they actually had that Emerald 1 out of 10. That was the one that I was like, okay, I need that one. Give me that. The other ones, I've got copies of all of them. So they're cool cards, but I'm like, I don't need to pay the premium for it. But they are cool cards. I like them. They look nice. So, but thank you for bringing it to my attention. I didn't get a chance to reply back, but thank you for that.
Checks in the mail.
Absolutely. Buying some baseball studs for Q4, waiting on some other stuff. That's cool. I like that. Best Auto Juan Soto. Yeah, nice. I like that. Good evening, Brad. Absolutely. Of course, waiting for Space Jam 3 and the new documentaries to cash it in on. Live the dream, trigger finger. Live the dream.
So a question out to the audience there would be, how many are those, or percentage-wise, what is those cards that they're after? Advanced investment or personal collection, PC?
That's a good question. That's kind of why I wanted that topic in the title to be more collector centric.
I don't know what the title was, actually. You keep saying it, and I didn't
in
see
the title, I put 2/3 Mark of the Hobby Year. It's literally in brackets.
Oh.
It's actually in the title. Yeah. So I took
care
of
the
that.
Title. I can't see
the title.
title.
No, I got you. But I put it there in advance.
I come through the back door, so I didn't see the front
but
door.
I did put it there so that later on, if folks can see, it took us a while to get to it. So probably what I'll do later on for people checking the replay, I'll try to add a timestamp for when we got past the video game discussion, because it was a good chunk of the discussion. But it was a very fun discussion. There were a lot of angles to it. It was kind of interesting to get into.
I think this one was really interesting. It was stimulating for me too.
Yeah. So I was very happy to do it, but then I wanted to leave this question open for the chat and for everybody else, because I'm genuinely curious how people have made out so far. There's still time left. Obviously, we're going to have September, October, and November and December. We got 4 months coming up, so still plenty of time.
Coming, guys.
It is. But as I said, we got those other card shows. There's a Dallas show on this weekend, so we're going to have the first Dallas show post national. That's going to be a thing. We're going to have those Vegas shows and stuff.
It'll be interesting to see the post-national shows and seeing how they're doing, what's happening. I did watch a New York show. They said the collectors, a lot of vintage collectors in New York. Who was that did that show? I can't remember. The guy with the smiley face is always laughing. He's got that, I forget it. He's a little bit heavier, so kind of guy. But he went to New York, and it was really interesting seeing, different collectors.
So is this
in New
Mojo?
York. Yeah, Mojo. No. Yeah, Mojo. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So he was in New York, and he said, "Oh, we got to go back to masks here." And he said, "Yeah, there's a lot of vintage. This thing's been running for 35 years." And
that normally is the East Coast National. That one, they are a little bit more vintage heavy traditionally, because they normally do it in White Plains. Normally, that's the one that's in White.
It's been called the White Plains forever. Yeah.
But they did have to relocate it, because I think the White Plains one didn't have. The White Plains one is being used, I believe, as like a COVID hospital or something. Like right now, the facility is in use. So they did it over at Hofstra. I've had a chance to, they've done stuff at Hofstra before, but they think they had to do it at Hofstra because of the other venue was being used.
So like the expo, it's going to be at the other building because they're using this one for storage.
Yeah, it could be. At least storage makes more sense.
It's guaranteed income, right?
Yeah. But the other thing also, if you have to keep in mind, is that at least at the International Center, they have multiple halls. You could move it around if you needed to. If all the halls are being used, use the other hall. Hall 2, hall 3, hall 4.
There's really you can't fit the halls. There's certain halls that don't work for it.
I know. Yeah.
And the one that they're getting is, I don't really like it. It's a little bit older looking. Everything will be flipped around. Nobody will know where anybody is. So if you want to go see somebody specifically, you won't know. You can't figure it out.
Well, if it's busy enough, Bobby, we won't be able to find anybody anyway.
Well, I hope I find my own booth.
Well, we can only hope, Bobby. If you want, maybe if you arrange the floor map properly, you can find Jeremy's floating head. You can use that as a guide. It'll be like the North Star.
No, it'll be easy. All you have to do is
disembodied head, but it'll be floating. It may be a balloon by then. He might have a blimp.
Hearing the music in the distance. There's a lifestyle. Life is.
If he has music, we're doomed. I'm gonna make my video why I'm not going to the expo. That's number 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Hells to the no. It's a hop, skip, and a jump for me, and I'm still a hard pass. Hard pass. Okay, so Trigger Finger says PC for me. Soto and TT Scars are serial numbered. I think serial numbered is good. It's a good play. It's a good solid play. 75% PC and the rest to make profit and to buy more PC. That's valid. That's a fair thing. DAPS. Well, we can only hope for appearances from DAPS. I think that's fair. We can only live the dream.
At the Toronto Expo?
99% of what I buy is PC this year. I've only added 2 or 3 cards of main PC, which is MJ, and collect 90s good inserts. So with the price rise, I had to be a lot more selective. That's fair.
But I want to know the 0.1%.
There you go. That's fair. Vintage and rare baseball parallels, definitely an off season. Maybe some basketball once the mid-season doldrums kick in. Yeah, and being adjustable and being willing to adjust and being open to possibilities can help you. It can make it think. If you're not too rigid, there are opportunities because we have the seasons. There is still some seasonal rotation in these different sports. Like,
Sure.
if you don't buy directly into the teeth of when everything is super hot, you can take advantage of these little opportunities here and there. There's always a chance.
Because basketball goes down after the season, right? Right after the season ends.
Traditionally, it has, and I think some cards have.
I think
some
you did a video on that.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, but it won't be like everybody always tries to look for a hard and fast rule, right? But it's like, it depends. It's like some players, absolutely. Some cards, absolutely. It still depends. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So I've been happily adding other PC players as prices are a lot more affordable. Very fair. Collector,
Yeah.
don't follow prices like a hawk short term, so don't know how I'm doing. That's fine. That's reasonable. He's a star guy, doesn't consider the A6 Fears rookie card. Gotcha.
Oh, wow.
You got to make your video pitching it, Eric. You got to tell people why they need to go.
Boy, that'll be a hard pitch, brother.
Well, I don't know, Bobby. There's so much. It's so much easier just buying shit on eBay. And by the way, jokes aside, if it turns out that it is going to be very heavily attended, I'll be curious to see how they arrange it.
Well, it is 4 days.
Yeah.
So they've extended days to allow for the extra, maybe limited.
In theory, yeah.
So we'll see if
Yeah.
they're allowed how many people in at a time.
Yep.
Well, it's a large venue. It's got a high roof.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be very interesting. And it's going to be a little bit more expensive too for food.
Mhm.
So I'm coming in at the top of the market there.
Mhm. Well, I think right now I'm still working out my plan. Everything's tentative. I got to figure out where I'm at. I think I'll be okay. Work-wise, I think we're winding to a good spot by then because I've got some major projects coming to an end by then, so I should have some time.
Book your
And
hotel
vacation time
early.
accrued. Yeah, and vacation time accrued, which is important. You got to have that ready to go. I think we're
Of
good
course.
there.
Yeah.
I think the key for me, I'm not going 4 days no matter what. That's out. I'm going to skip that first day no matter what.
I'm just doing 3.
Yeah.
I got
it's
a
one of
wedding
the-
on the third day in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm not a dealer, so I don't like, I can pick and choose. If I do take that week off vacation, honestly, that first day I would rather just be relaxing. I'd rather just be fully rested and like because
So
work
you'll do
sometimes-
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. and
basically, yeah, I'm thinking like
squash a Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
it could
by
be.
Sunday, I think it'll be all.
yeah, that's
as it
probably the
usually
direction.
is.
That's probably the direction I'd lean.
Unless it is limited going in, then they'll probably divide out 2,000 people per day or per
Yeah, well, I
session.
think for if I do it, then I'm getting whatever the best combination ticket is. That's going to be the best way. Or I may reach out to some friends I have that do dealer booths. Maybe see if I can go that direction. That might be another way. So there are some options. Either way, I'll either see if I can angle for a dealer badge, or barring that, I'll just pay for whatever the super duper ultra, Prism VIP is, whatever they call that.
I haven't come in the front door since 92.
That's fair.
No, 96, I would say. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. So trigger everyone. Okay, just chatting with each other. Markets always change. That is true, Will. That is true. But yeah, I think that's fair.
I think all these the blogs are helping people assert their collection habits a little better. I think exposing the information out there, it helps everybody. I see more people honing in on what they're collecting opposed to just, the random whatever.
Mhm.
I see people getting a little bit more diligent with what they really want to collect. And that's good to see because that makes you more focused on where you're going opposed to, who's coming, what's next, what's the next big thing. I think people are away from that now and they're just kind of, except the video games, of course.
I don't think that's a bad thing, though. Sometimes it's
a
like,
good
sometimes this situation forces you to focus, which means that you actually get to, a lot of times, like I said, I enjoy reading and listening to a lot of different subjects.
Sure.
And one of the things that has fascinated me is the movement behind the whole minimalism thing. But there's the misunderstanding of what it is
I never
because it
understood
gets thrown. But here's the thing: whatever you think the definition is, you're wrong. Because the people that actually started are like, it's not about having the least amount of stuff. It's about being particular and getting the stuff that matters. That's what it's supposed to mean.
It's actually, I would even say minimalized. I would say peacocking. So they want the nice piece of this. They want this of that. They want the best.
I get you. I'm talking about the general minimalist. I'm not talking about consolidation. You're talking about consolidation.
No,
because that's
not really. No, I think they have 50 different things, and they're going to have the best of the 50 different things. That's 50 is a lot in a set if you're or in a lot in a group if you're collecting, high priced items.
No, I agree. But but what I'm talking about is the idea of getting stuff that either has utility or that you actually care about. It's not the 50 best. It's the 50 best for you.
That's what I meant.
But 50 best for you might not be the most valuable. Some of the stuff that you really like might be $5. So it's not the best. You have better stuff, but you really like this $5 thing. So it stays.
Generally speaking, yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that the best for them is usually, I want this comic, the number one. I don't want the number
Yeah,
10
but
for $5.
what I'm getting at is if you're talking about like the concept of the minimalism thing, you'll keep the 8 because you actually love the 8. And the number one is the more valuable one. Yeah, it's the better quote unquote version, but I actually don't care about it. So if I'm going to keep one, I'm going to keep the one I like, even though the other one is more valuable. So that's kind of the decision making. It's being intentional. That's all it is. It's being intentional. You're not going to have it all.
It's not money minded. It's not investment minded. It's personal minded. I get it.
Yeah. And you could still have one that is a valuable one that happens to be one that maybe you do really enjoy. And maybe there's a story to you hunting it down. So it has some meaning. It happens to be valuable, but it also has meaning. So
meaning is actually really important.
Yeah. So the two things can work together or they can be mutually exclusive. It can work both ways. So it's one of those decision-making processes because some people have some stuff they're chasing. It's not actually worth that much. Maybe it's hard to find because no one actually cares about it, but it's hard to find.
That's the big part.
But if they get it, then this combined is $50. And you spent 5 years searching for it? Yes. That was the point. The point was
realistically, those things that are that price should be a lot more, but they just aren't because people don't understand the population of these certain things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's
coming back to Dustin's thing, it's like the rarity.
But I think it also goes back to what he was talking about in the sense that if he gets those black box games and he has that collection in front of him and he's happy with it, then the relative value isn't going to be necessarily the primary concern. It might be good. It might not. It might turn out there's tons of them out there, but you got the complete set. You got it in front of you and you're happy with the display. Great. Sounds good.
Feel good about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds great. So Collector says a handful of public schools are already closing, going online here in Cincinnati area as the numbers are rising pretty quick. Yeah. That's why I say I don't take it for granted. I'm working off the assumption. If the expo runs as planned, if our vaccination levels are good and they make it happen, hey, it's great.
I think we'll see less people coming from the U.S.
I
think we'll see more of the popular people coming in, but I don't think you'll see a lot of the general people who usually just go, hey, it's it's an hour away. Let's go across the border. I think a lot of those guys will stay away.
That might mitigate the population. Then might keep it a little under control. The two could kind of offset each other a little bit.
Yeah, I think it will. That's the big problem. In the U.S., it's totally different. But in Canada, I think it'll be especially with this, the vaccine thing going across. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's going to stop a lot of people.
Yeah. So, well, to a certain degree, I'm just making sure we clarify because Bobby and I are talking about similar things, but it's just how we phrase it as well. That's why I use that verbiage because entire books are written about the concept and people can't agree. That's why I say like semantics and stuff, because one person literally takes it to the extreme. They're like, I own 5 things. Well, that isn't really intentional. Like you're actually making life harder for no reason.
And I live in tiny house nation.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever.
I was like, good for you. Congratulations. But
not that.
Yeah. What I would say is that wouldn't be a goal of mine in life. But what I would consider a goal is maybe I just want to have more stuff around me that actually has some meaning. Get rid of the stuff that doesn't have meaning and then find a nice middle. So it's like, that could work.
At that time, you become the savvy collector.
Yeah.
You're collecting for yourself. You're collecting for your personal thing. There's a little bit of few pieces that are, kind of on a pedestal. But other than that, for the most part, you have your team, you have your player, you have your whatever. Or if you just want, peacock it out, that's good too.
Yeah. And if that genuinely is what makes you happy, then maybe that's the right answer for you. If that is genuinely what makes you happy, then go for it.
But most of the people too, because not too many people have anything worth $5,000 in their collection. I'd have to say the lion's share, 95% at least.
Oh, we haven't seen what's behind the curtain. All the $5,000 things are back there.
Are they?
Soon.
Yeah, maybe.
I think the minimalist joke for divorce has been used, and I think it's not a bad one. It's found a 10 and have to keep the numbers down. That's fair. That's fair. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I want to take some time and think about it because I literally was asked, hey, would you talk about some tips for the card show and stuff? And I'm like, this is going to be different than any other expo we've ever been to. Not just because they changed the number of days, not just because it's been almost 2 years since the last one where we're used to having 2 a year. That's going to be different. That's going to be weird. Some people are going to have to find their groove again because they haven't done a show in a while. So they're like out of practice. They're like, all right, let me get my inventory ready.
It's in a new building.
Yeah, it's in a new building.
So it's just going to be mayhem. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of
It's going to throw a lot of people off. Like, it's going to be completely like, oh, I'm out of whack. I knew where everything was. I knew how things were configured. I had it in my head. And now what? Now
I can't predict what's going to happen. I have no idea.
Yeah, there's too many variables to that. That's why if I do anything, it'll be really vague. It'll be really kind of open-ended, being like, look, this is what worked before. I don't know if any of it's going to work now because it's going to change. The game has changed. How we're going to do this is going to change and how people are going to approach it. Because even from the dealer perspective, are you going to be able to figure out properly the demand to be able to bring stuff that may last 4 days? You want to sell stuff, but if you price it too well and you clear out the table, maybe that's what you want and then you're good to go. Hey, great, you sold out the table. But if you actually wanted to wheel and deal, well, then you're going to be kind of wheel and deal from empty. You're going to have to then go on buying sprees. Okay, bring stuff over. Bring more stuff over.
I don't think it'll be like that. I think guys are generally overpriced opposed to underpriced. So
I'd be curious to see if any new guys come in and like don't realize how to price it at a level that gets it in. We've already seen it. We've already seen it enough.
Days are gone, though. I think
we've seen enough in the U.S. that some people came in and bought out tables just because they're like, yeah, I can still sell it for more.
Yeah, but we're talking about an $800 table for the 4 days. That's too much to spend not to know. I would think.
In today's market, $800 is a common. So you guys have the crazy anti-vax uneducated too. Yeah, we do. I have a lady at an intersection who literally goes there to protest by herself. She literally goes there with a sign protesting by herself. She's like, the government can't tell me what to do. And I'm like, and she literally walks around and I'm like, you realize if you bother people, you're basically disturbing the peace so they can arrest you, not for protesting, but for being a nuisance. Because if you start walking up to people and they're like, get away from me.
Yeah.
Because she's in an intersection. She's not like in a park or like in a parking lot or like a space. She's literally in an intersection where people have to walk by to cross. So you're in the way of traffic. So it's like, you could get dragged away in cuffs. It's like, you're taking away my civil liberty. No, you're literally in the way. Get out of the way. Go over there and stand there with your little play card and hang out there by yourself. Because she's literally by herself. It's like, good for you. I don't know, man. It's kind of interesting.
We have anti-vaxxers. Yeah, I think everybody's got a choice and they can make it.
Yeah, but there are people that we have. That's what I mean. That lady isn't about your choice. She's talking about it as if it's choice. She wants other people not to. She's literally like trying to talk them out of it. And I'm like, that's not your business. If you're saying that people shouldn't tell you what to do, why are you telling people what to do?
Then they need another lady in another corner talking them into it.
That's what I'm.
That's what we have.
There's a difference between stating your opinion on it and trying to push your opinion on other people. Because when you're actively walking up to them and trying to yell at them about wearing masks and stuff, it's like, that's not your business.
No.
Because if it was the other way around, you would have a problem and you'd complain if somebody came up and yelled at you for not wearing a mask.
And when everybody carries it the same, whether you're vaccinated or not, tell me there's a difference.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where like you can't have it both ways. You can't talk about your rights and then try to push to tell somebody else they shouldn't be able to do what they want to do.
Really? That's like most of the world right now. They think that is their prerogative to do that. People who, getting something, if they tell you something to make society better, I get it. But, we're talking about something that's injected into you. At that, I draw the line. I got my vaccination. I got double vaxxed. I'm good. But those choices are people's choices. Yeah.
But
So
then they
I'll
can't,
leave it
but
at
then they
that.
can't, but then they can't complain when the stores don't want to reopen to you. The stores, because they can be like, well, right now, everybody who comes in here has to wear a mask. My store can have that policy. You don't have to do it, but you don't get to come in. Because I have my right not to have you come in. My store. You can't have it both ways. Because they're like, well, I should be able to go wherever I want to go. Great. Can I go to your house and take your stuff? That's against the law. Why? Apparently you can go wherever you please, even if people don't want you there.
It's not like the unvaccinated are the carriers. Everybody's the carrier.
Anybody can be the carrier. The unvaccinated statistically have a better chance to be a carrier. Like we just had this discussion. The vaccine is not a cure. It is a lowering of percentages. But if you're unvaccinated, your percentage likelihood of carrying and bringing it is more. That's it. It's just a higher percentage. It's just
I was 76 nose ferals each.
The other one's 77. The unvaccinated are 77 and a half. So there's your 1.5.
Okay, so we have more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ah, good old social contract. Back to my philosophy days. Warms my heart. No, that's fair. Okay, so we're gonna start winding her down, I think, a little bit. I think we did talk about the eBay thing, history getting pulled out. That's unfortunate. I think that'll become a bigger problem down the road. It's a shame because I did like being able to look at the history of some stuff. It was nice to have that option.
Should have printed it out.
Yeah, all of it, exactly.
Well, just key stuff, but that's the small stuff that really counts. Like the stuff that I looked up on. Thank God I did.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
The exograph.
So here's what we'll do. I know there's a bunch of other live streams and stuff tonight, so I know that. But here's what I'll do. I'll give a little window just at the end. And anybody can take me up on it, and I'll see. I will monitor. It won't be just anybody. But if you've been on here before, you got a better chance than likely. I'll put the little link.
Odds are.
Yep. I'll put the little link on there. If any of you guys want to pop in and give any commentary on stuff that you're working on. Because it's kind of what we were talking about. That's why I say I want to end on the collector theme. I want to end on the, hey, we're at this stage of the year. We're headed into September. Got a couple of months left. We still got some time for some shows and stuff. Regardless, one way or the other, we still got some time. Is there anything cool that you're chasing after? I know some of you guys gave some of that feedback and some stuff you're working on. Well, that's cool. Is there any of the rest of you have anything interesting projects you're working on that you want to make some headway at the end of the year here before we roll over the calendar?
A website and an app, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so for you, obviously, that's going to be a big thing because you want to kind of have it ready to go by the expo because theoretically you'd be showcasing it there. That'd be a big thing.
Yeah, it's not the greatest time to bring it out. Just saying.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be fine. I'm predicting we should be ready to go.
Okay.
I just don't know. People won't be able to find me the where I usually. I don't know what's gonna happen. So it's hard sitting there saying, do I do the 4 days, put the money into it, and do all that stuff, and we don't know what's going to happen there. I guess because I can't monitor it. I don't know how many people will and won't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, will they sign up right there? Will they go home and look at it? Will they? I don't know. So.
Well, are you any closer to kind of what we talked about? Would you have any kind of display?
Yes, I would. I would
yeah,
have to
so
have
like a
TV.
demo of some kind. Yeah, exactly, something.
Yeah, I have a TV. So if I'm not there, well, I won't be there on the 12th because my son's wedding. So I'm gonna have to set up a TV display, and I think I'm gonna have a couple guys selling the Behind books there too on the booth, so they can just talk to people while they're selling their books or whatever. You know, so I'm always gonna have somebody at the booth. There's a couple of people who said they'd step in and help too.
Okay.
So I'm not worried about having it covered. And if the app is there and it goes through a 1 minute video, a 2 minute video, you know, it can just run through the whole thing and then it'll repeat. I think it'll be fine because I think it'll give you. And then all you have to do is hop on. Maybe somebody will have there. You can use my password. Here's my phone. Check it out.
Now, since it's an app, I assume it's tablet friendly as well, right?
It's both.
Yeah. I'd be curious. I think we talked about it a little bit, but would you consider putting it on a tablet there, just having it at the, hey, here you go, give it a try for a minute.
Yeah.
Because because the proof is in the pudding, right? If you just go through, I don't know how the internet situation is going to be. That's the only thing I'd be curious about. What we're going to have.
They say it's not good. So that's why the video is more important.
Yeah.
I don't have a tablet.
Yeah.
I just have a phone and a computer. Sure. So
yeah.
So I'm sure I can get one, and you know, at least people can try it.
Yeah. Because I think that's always the best, right? If you can at least play around with it for a minute, at least a couple of minutes, because seeing the video is good, but then you can be like quickly scroll, press something. Oh, okay, I get it. Okay, because that's that visual aspect.
Yeah, and the personal video, or activeness is everything and key. They go, oh, I can look up that. I can look at that. Hey, Meanwhile, a guy's sitting there for 50. Sort of like when I had my books out. There was guys who sat there for 20 minutes looking through my book. Mm-hmm. It's just like, and when they came out, they were $25. So they were literally sitting through that, and I'm kind of sitting there going, well, if you have any questions, feel free. Because what happens is he's using the book, he's bending it, and the funny part, after guys who do buy it, they put that one down and they grab the new one. So it's like every book's the sample book, it's kind of funny.
Well, that's almost where, now obviously it'd be an extra expense, it might not be necessary. That's where I almost would have had like a loose leaf version of the book, like not the bound one, but just have it in with the little spiral and be like, knock yourself out. Okay, it already doesn't fold. It's like just
I sacrificed one.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's already set for that.
And everybody asked for, hey, what's the best that you can do? I said I can do 1 for 25, 2 for 50, 4 for 100. That's best I can do. I never really, because I kept it cheap. I reasonable. And
I think 25 for a reference book is actually very reasonable.
It was. I got good advertising dollars, so I said I'm going to keep it low, and then people can't, say, hey, well, it's a little, so it was inexpensive, and for what they got, it was very inexpensive. And we have, so if the guy's sitting there and looking through the book and they want a deal and go, yeah, you can have that one for 20, because by the end of the day, they go, no, I'll just pay the 25 and get the nice one. It's kind of funny. Nice. They won't buy it.
I like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised nobody pitched the bargain hunting to you. I'm surprised nobody was like, would you take 15?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things. You always got the tire kicker who's going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So quickly,
all you have to do is just say, no, it's 25.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I get it.
And then you do the funny thing. Yeah, but it's 2 for 50. And they'll go, oh, okay. Yeah. And then most of them walk away after that one. Well, I think they're not going to buy it anyways.
It's always interesting, and it's tricky, because references book and textbooks have this weird pricing structure. Normally, they're very expensive, and part of that is because, well, you're going to sell less copies of them, so you don't have the volume. Like a best-selling novel, you can sell for this thing because you're going to sell hundreds of thousands or 1 million copies. So you can spread out the cost and get paperback and make it cheap and do it in mass market. That's what mass market trade paperbacks are for. That's that version. Hardcovers are always going to be more expensive because they're the first ones that come out of the block. They're more expensive to make too.
Yeah, especially. Yeah.
But even stuff that you wouldn't think, because one of the things, and I used to read it all the time. Once a year or so, I used to read one of my old history. They call it a textbook, but to me, it's just a book because it's a normal size book. It's not like a full size thing. It was The Pursuit of History. And I have like the 3rd edition or the 2nd edition. And that was the one I had when I got in university. And I would scan through it because I still enjoy the historical methods at heart. And that's what that book is about. Try and buy, I was just for fun. I was like, I wonder what a new copy is. I keep my copy in good condition, but I wonder what the new copy, this is like $70, $80 for one. And I'm like, wow. It's like 300 pages. Wow. I'm like, what for? It doesn't matter. 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition, 70, 80, $100. And I'm like, the digital version 60.
Really?
It's like, really? Yeah. It's like,
wow.
They're not making it cheaper ever. It's never going to go down in price. They're just not going to do it. So I'm like, well, I guess my copy's valuable. I got like the 2nd edition. So it's like, and I've had it since 2000. I've had it 18 years. At least I've kept my copy in good shape, but my copy's 18 years old.
The funny thing is, the magazines are free at the expo. When you go in, they have their own little magazine, and then you go to Classic, and Classic has a whole bunch of free catalogs. Here, take our catalog of our past auction, and people just kind of come by. I have a stack on the table, and they'll go, oh, and they grab it and they look at it and and then they just keep walking off. Like, hey, you gotta pay for that. So everyone assumes, there's just a stack of them. That means they're free.
Yeah.
Amazing this stuff. This is just in book sales, the interesting stuff, the stories I could tell. It's just funny.
Yeah. Well, I think people don't associate, I understand from their perspective why they refuse to lower the price, because it's become the standard for the university courses that are involved in it. A reference book is a reference book. It's something that is used in that genre. So for
Yeah,
many
but
years, like it
they
becomes a
have to
standard.
pay for it, do they
Yeah,
not? Yeah. So
exactly.
they're
So
forced to, so they'll never drop the price.
they will never drop the price. So it's one of those things like you can go find a used copy from somebody if they'll sell it to you, but that's it. That's the only way you're getting a discount. Otherwise,
So
you're paying full price.
Yeah, because somebody wants to get their money out of it because they realize, hey, if you have to go 70 and $100, you got to give me like 50.
Yeah, exactly. But that's always been an interesting thing for me. It's like, okay. So quickly, I'll read this one. Aussie Card Dad gave a couple minutes ago was they're still in full lockdown, which is true. And until we're vaccinated, won't be letting us out. Yeah, they're very stringent. In Australia, they're not kidding around about that.
Yeah.
They will literally, because it's to the point that Australian expats, if they come back, they're basically stuck in the country. Like they basically can't leave.
Yeah.
And they got to go through like a million hoops. Like there's a lot of stuff where it's like, are you sure you want to go back? Because you may have to like lawyer yourself up just to get yourself out.
True.
And play around with embassies, and then you have to go to another country as like a layover, and then eventually you can get yourself back into North America if that's your desire. Very complicated. I did see this one from Triggerfinger. We appreciate your restraint. He says, do you have his current wardrobe selection is not television appropriate? We do appreciate your restraint. Unless you're Bill Cosby, then its proof is in the pudding pop. Fair.
Get out of that gelatin.
Mutagenesis, that's a big issue too. Eric paid $70 for his copy. Worth every penny. See, Eric, you could have already been on here shilling the book for Bobby. I already left the link.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're supposed to be pitching us on the expo. You're supposed to be convincing us. Bobby has to go there. He's basically, not contractually obligated, but he has a very good reason to be there. You got to pitch it to the rest of us, Come on. Phil Collins' Genesis was great. I always appreciate a good musical reference. Cool. So anyway, other than that, guys, anything else you want to chat about? It was a slow week. We did get amazing mileage out of that video and the pieces that go to it. Those who do check out the replay, I will include a video to Carl's video about the whole WATA thing and heritage. It is very interesting. If you are remotely interested, it's cool. It's good to check it out. It is interesting how the pieces come together. I did include some of those other things. I'll include a link to Dustin's channel in case you're not familiar with it. He did pop in and was nice enough to chat with us for a while on it. So he is somewhat familiar in that world. So it was very interesting to chat with. And otherwise, it's been kind of a real. I've appreciated that we've had a pretty relaxing week hobby-wise. Otherwise, it wasn't too much craziness stacked on top of each other to the point that you're like, oh my god.
The PWCC did go fast though.
It did. And that's one of those things. If it's an interesting topic, you can take your time and oh man, wow, we got a pretty good chunk there out of that. So it's pretty good.
And there's also some interesting videos on that channel that you're going to post below there. It goes into another couple similar things. Absolutely. Otherwise, video games and cheating and all this other stuff. But this guy's an investigative. How would you call him? Because he's on the internet.
Well, the thing is, you can still be a journalist on the internet. I don't think he considers himself that, but he's taken on the mantle of doing the process because it's still investigating. He's still digging into it. I would say like an investigative documentarian because he did do it in kind of a documentary format. It was a lot more of that because he did have interviews. He did draw in clips and stuff. And it's still kind of a narrative driven story. It was broken into logical pieces. Doing it online doesn't change what it is, but it is more of it's like investigative documentarian is really what I would consider it, like a hybrid of that.
Vlogitarian?
That would be a terrible name to call it. I'm sure a lot of them would be like, and we're going to jump off a bridge now.
It was good anyways. He put it together so well. Very few I've seen done so well.
Yeah, and I did want to make sure he got his credit for it because I think he did a phenomenal job and I was appreciative of it and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I think that'll be it. Back next week, usual thing. I'm thinking of a couple of videos that I'd love to do. I'm not sure yet how I want to approach it. I left the more Daps Man here is because it's always fun to have more Daps Man. It just is. Yeah. But I need him to do something out of the ordinary. Right now, he's pretty much doing Dapsy things. Like, it's not really anything that throws me off that much. Like, yeah, it's Daps doing Daps things.
There's only so many angles he has.
I was hoping he would go off the deep end and do something really crazy, like
maybe
do like a huge giveaway or make like a pronouncement on something. And it's like, nah, it's been pretty much the standard fare.
Maybe you've given more business. He doesn't have to do that now. He's sitting back on his laurels after redirected people to go see what he looks like. He's getting all these fake hits that he's going to get one time and going, hey, my viewership is up.
Listen, if Daps ever gets into video games, then we'll give him some more airtime.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. If he gets into that world, then we can talk. So you see, you got more Daps, man. No more Daps. So the audience can't decide, guys. The audience just can't decide. More Daps, less Daps, no Daps, some Daps. Anyway, sounds good. So I appreciate the comments in the chat as always. Thanks you guys for popping in and contributing. Appreciate that. Thanks to, again, Dustin for chiming in and giving his 2 cents on it. We were able to have a pretty good conversation with that. We'll see what happens this upcoming week. We'll see what happens in the rest of the hobby things. All the Fanatic stuff I think is going to take a while to develop, so we're not going to keep beating that dead horse. There's no point.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it eventually. They'll do something else, and then there'll be more to talk about, but we'll definitely get into it. We're definitely in the dog days of summer, though. We're definitely going to relax, I think, a little bit here. Mm-hmm. And I'll take some time in the next week, though, and think of some more kind of open-ended, because I want to have some more of the panel discussions. I'll bring some collectors on, and we'll talk about some other fun stuff. And if something comes up, we can discuss that, too. So that'll be kind of the idea, I think. Sports Card Invest is always there. There you go. Sports Card Invest is another option. We'll see if we do, if down the road they do something entertaining. I'm open to discussing a couple of them here and there, but it's not going to be a regular feature because there's a lot of them are the same. They do a lot of the same stuff. So it gets really old fast. Like, you're going to see it. You know how this works. Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate that. So anyway, again, thanks guys for hanging out this evening. It is now Saturday on the East Coast. Those of you, happy Saturday. Those of you on the West Coast, you got a little time left. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. If you'd be so kind, hit a like on the way out. The thumbs up is always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done. Yes, subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate that. Collector-based chat would be good. We're going to work on it. I think we'll enjoy the downtime, the breather, and we'll try to do that, and we'll get some more topics. By the way, if you got suggestions for topics, throw it in the comments after the live stream's over. Just put something in the comment section there. I read the comments. So if you got some good ideas, I'll take it. By all means, feel free. Have a good night, folks. Take it easy.
I know.